here, 9:34. Thank you all for being here. And again this morning with welcoming our new commissioner, Jamie Doggett, from the fine metropolis of White Sulphur Springs. You want to say a few things about yourself, some of your statewide activities previous to this? National?
I think my most favorite, and the thing that was maybe something that influenced my life more than anything. Well, I was a teacher in Winifred, high school English teacher for 2 years, and during that program, or when I was there, they had these films that you could use that came out of the Montana Committee for the Humanities at that time, now Humanities Montana. And they were modern films for that day. They had Ron Howard in them, as a young man, and they followed. There were several of them. They were just short, but they followed several of the short stories that were in the literature book. I have a degree, a BA in history from MSU, but because I didn't have a basketball or football coaching minor, I had to teach English. Not that still bothers me, but so I became familiar with the Committee for the Humanities just through that. And then was active in the Republican Party, and when Stan Stevens was elected governor, they encouraged, because there had been a long line of Democrat governors, they encouraged Republican people to get involved on boards, and that's how my mother-in-law got involved in the Library Commission. But they said I wanted to be on the tourism board. I thought that'd be fun. But all of a sudden I saw that the humanities had governor appointees. So I called over and they said, oh no, we've put you on this other board. I was really wanting to be on this humanities, and a day later I got a letter being accepted onto the humanities committee. But I served on the humanities for 12 years. I chaired it for 3 during the times of the Gingrich desire to abolish the agencies. And then I was elected to the Federation of State Humanities Councils, which is a national membership organization for the 56 state humanities councils in the Commonwealths. And then President Bush nominated me to be on the National Council for the National Endowment for the Humanities. And I served on that for 9 years of a 6-year term. And then
what's the match on that?
It means that nobody approves any new appointees, which happened later. And then 2 years ago, or a year ago, I can't remember, the Obama White House called and asked me, and it's kind of cool. I mean, I'm working at the brewery, and my cell phone rings. It says, "Hi, Jamie, this is so-and-so from the White House." Oh, okay, hi. President Obama would like to nominate you to be replaced or return to the National Council. So I kind of hesitated because I thought it would be good for someone else to have a chance, but what the heck, I'll try it. And because I barely made it in the Bush presidency because there were Democrats in control of Congress. And I didn't make it in from the Obama presidency because the Republicans were in control. So either one wants to, it happens on both sides. They don't want to approve whoever's appointed. So luckily I didn't, and hopefully someone has been chosen to be in there for the council, because it's very difficult to get members, no matter who's in power, onto the commission because of that game playing that they do. But that, I'd say that the humanities are my passion, and my obsession is the business of storytelling and the sharing of the stories and civility. I believe that, and I need to practice civility better, but civility is the homework of, I think, what we do here at the library. But the humanities is publicly funded, so they're very conscious of wanting, if they have a group discussion, it has to be all sides, not both sides, but all sides to participate. And I think in school is civility, not necessarily competitiveness, but civility.
Amen. Okay.
And they milk cows.
And you chase. Well, wonderful. We're welcome aboard, and I'm really glad that you were nominated as the second. Yes, please. Oh, and here's us. I'm Bruce.
Jenny Scott and Fish Commissioner Marla Stark of the State Library.
Superintendent Arnson. Public Schools.
Erin LaFramboise. Oh, sorry, skipping over Jamie.
Please.
Erin LaFramboise, Commissioner from Browning.
And
Chris Schmidt, State Library. Tracy Smith, State Library.
Kevin Hammer, State Library. John Penn, Lewis and Clark Library and Montana Library Association.
And we have Ken Law online, but I'm not getting any sound from him. I don't know if we have. There he is. I finally heard you. It was on and he was saying things.
Hi, this is Ken. I'm here online.
Hi, Ken.
thank you for joining us. Ken, can you hear us?
Yeah, it's a little garbled at times, but it's pretty clear.
Okay. We will enunciate.
Hope you missed me.
Do you have new staff introductions?
We do not have new staff introductions this morning. Many of you met Sarah Parrish, the new leaders advisor, last night. And she was out sick this morning, so she's not able to be with us. And we'll be sure to introduce her to you.
Just as a footnote, we go on to longevity. Thank you for organizing.
If you haven't had a chance to look at some of the materials that were displayed last night, I encourage you to spend a little time with the historic equipment, some of the different Braille materials, some news, press releases, and other kinds of media stories that we're doing about the program. Really interestingly, a letter from Wallace Stegner granting permission for the recording program to record portions of American places.
Okay.
Well, it is my very, very great pleasure to give Chris her 35-year
Holy Toledo.
So you picture Montana. When they said it was 35 years, I said, but you just gave her 30. So you have to possibly be 35 years. And you all know. And I don't think I have to say how much Chris's hard work and dedication and just honesty and transparency and forthrightness comes across in all of her work. We all trust and rely on her so much, and I know I express this as a commission at the same time as well. We talk about the clean audits, but what that means when we do clean audits year after year after year is truly remarkable. The audit committee gave her a round of applause. She manages the budget with just the absolute diligence. She holds us all accountable as individual managers and as an agency, and she shares that accountability with all of you. She herself is truly very visible for her best to kind of someone who brings on the right set of skills and personality to the business. Thank you guys all. It's been a great pleasure to work for the state of Montana and especially for the state library. I'm looking forward to the next round of my life. I'm not quite sure exactly all that will mean, but we'll be spending a lot of time with my grandbabies. The number 4th one is due in October, and that's how I chose the date.
so I could spend more time loving those babies. So that's a big part of Bob's and my life to come in the future. I will miss you guys dearly. Everybody's asked me if I put a calendar on the wall and I'm picking out the days, and I said, I can't do that. Number one, it just means the end is coming. And number two, it means I got a lot to get done before I can walk out the door. And I'm starting to lose days, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm not going to get it all done. But I have all the faith that my next replacement will be above and beyond my abilities and ready to take you guys to the next level. And I look forward to hearing about them. And thank you guys.
I would just like to say that I've known you for a long time. Learned so much from you. I have to say, you made a lot of things possible that were only marginally difficult. And you actually made it look easy. I'm so grateful for that. You changed my life and made my professional life possible. And I hope you're a stranger, huh?
Yeah, no. I'll come visit.
Jenny, are there any books that she could read?
This is the kind of humor we're going to expect.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
This is
That's on my list too, lots of reading.
Chris has asked that we not do any kind of party, but I'm hoping after our October commission meeting, which is October 9th, maybe we can all adjourn to the Hawthorne possibility.
And there may be a multi-purpose cake in the refrigerator upstairs that is partially in honor of. Only partially. There are others who are doing multi-purpose, honors a number of people. Well, one of the other purposes is sitting and taking notes. Marlis is having an anniversary. Well, a birthday anniversary of birth, yes. So the flavor is actually sort of directed by Marlis' preferences. Tutti frutti.
I love it, yeah.
Okay.
Can't help it.
So approval of minutes from the June 13th executive session. These are all action items. You can see just a brief summary of the minutes here. Any discussion? This brief summary. For a motion to approve.
I so moved.
Thank you very much, Aaron. Second.
Second.
Thank you very much, Jamie. All those in favor? Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Hi.
Opposed?
Aye.
Thank you, Ken. Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the executive session minutes are approved. The minutes of June 13th, the general minutes. Any public comment regarding these minutes? Any discussion from commissioners? Hearing none, or staff? Hearing none, all those in favor of adopting the minutes from June 13th? I'm sorry, we hear a motion. Sorry. We have a motion to adopt the minutes from June 13th.
So moved.
Thank you very much, Jamie. A second. For discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you, Ken. Opposed? Abstentions? They are approved. Collect the executive session. There's no is there action needed on, no, we just included the April 11th, May 8th, that's just to have it there. So we can move on to the next item in our agenda, the commission goals and objectives. We'll start off with the work plan. So does everyone have a copy of this in front of you? The work plan looks like a little bit like a calendar. It seems to me me that one of the things that we talked about at our last meeting of interest was, wasn't there a list of, down at the bottom of the update by that first bullet is a list of, well, it's not. I was looking, didn't we have a list of possible events that we need to be at?
Yeah, there's I think we're talking about the travel planning document.
Ah,
Yeah. So there's 3 documents. There's your calendar of meetings.
okay,
There's your work plan in the logic model.
yes.
And then there is a spreadsheet of events to attend
That's
to
right,
help
right.
you plan your travel budget. So 3 documents.
So,
So the commission travel planning list, we have those on the bullets.
you think so? Is that what we really want to do?
Well, and if there's anything else you want to talk about, the commission undertaking in a way of work planning is, you might talk about several things.
Yes.
Looking at updating the strategic framework.
So why don't we start there?
It would be great. Words.
So I'm now looking on the draft fiscal 19 commission work plan document, the update. I'm looking at the very bottom of it. There are 4 bullets. We talked about updating the strategic framework. If I recall correctly, staff suggested maybe a little extra emphasis in continuing education. Is that correct? And training. Definitely be thinking about the legislative session and FTE planning. Talked about enhancing opportunities for certified teacher librarians in Montana, and giving liaison to stakeholders, such as whatever. Actually, Elsie, maybe we should start with certified teacher librarian. How should we proceed with that?
It has to be in a partnership with our teacher prep programs. And then we can look at, so we start, how do I want to say this? We don't want to necessarily go backwards and grandfather in. We need to go forward, is how I view it. And then we need to give resources to those that are already in the field. And I believe that is palatable to existing librarians as well as we move this forward. What do you think?
I think that we've come a long way just in opening a dialogue. I think that that maintaining a certification for our teacher librarians is vital, and that's something that we both recognize, and we both recognize that it's doable, and we've made. We're actually not in a crisis. We have not 100% compliance. We never have had 100% compliance, but we have substantial compliance. And I think that we've taken a lot of time this year to look at the data that show us where the holes are. And I think that you're right, the teacher prep programs can do a lot, along with the OPI, to strategically talk to those administrators, because it seems like it's not necessarily a lack of people who are willing to be librarians or who are willing to partake in a certification program, but more administrators who aren't sure how to begin with that. And so targeting them not only just by the teacher prep programs calling them, but also through the curriculum instruction master's programs. So I think we made some really good strides, and that the OPI and the MSL, or the State Library Commission, both have a commitment to maintaining a certification for school librarians, and so that's a great start, and we look forward to continuing that work.
What emphasis? Oh, I apologize.
Oh, excuse me. I'm just wondering what specifically does the state library need to do to best help all the other parties kind of proceed forward? What is our role?
I'm not sure. I think it's more of an awareness piece between the teacher prep programs and OPI, and we want to always be sure that you're in the loop, or that the commission is in the loop in case something comes up where you can help. I don't see, and Elsie can weigh on this too, I don't see any immediate action that the commission needs to take. And it's also, I think, vital to keep the Montana Library Association in the loop, John Finn and Annette, because we don't know what bills are going to come up. It's not, in the past, it hasn't always been us introducing a bill. It's been, other bills that have come up that have posed a threat. And so we want to be working with the Montana Library Association because they're in a good position to advocate for school librarians. We had a wonderful workshop at Bozeman, and Colin Orto was able to attend, and it was focused on library advocacy. But we did talk about some other things, and I wanted to let you guys know in case you didn't get a copy of the letter, and I don't have a copy of the letter. G. Forte sent a letter praising Montana for having certified school librarians and thanking us for doing a great job for maintaining that for Montana's schools. And he also did send a field rep to the actual workshop.
So is there any relationship between the teacher certification program and the general librarian certification, or kind of what's our official name for it? Right, and for public librarians, is there any sort of connection between those two programs?
There's very little connection between those two programs because the state program is for public libraries and the OPI certification program certifies school librarians.
Well, I get that
but
part.
It crosses over. When we talk about internships, the OPI is always very gracious in accepting when we're talking about finishing the program. A lot of our students have to do that in the summer because they're working teachers and they cannot take that time off during the school year to be able to be mentored by another certified school librarian. So the OPI very kindly accepts the state certification for those types of mentorship relationships, which is amazing when it happens because it builds a network in that community between the public library and the school library. They can collaborate across the world.
Correct me if I'm wrong, I think the OPI grants credits to school librarians for attending any events and trainings that are sponsored through the state library.
Is there some sort of a conduit between your office and the state library in terms of talking about what's being offered? And there's this new process that's sort of an independent study process. Call it that. Sorry, but that's kind of what it is. Has there been discussions about any of that between the two?
Yes, I'm sure. We actually do that.
The initiative that Ann visited about with school leaders is very important. They churn every 3 years, sometimes even sooner, in our very rural where there might not be the librarian, so the emphasis is not a librarian. So our office then is looked at data, we've looked at some things, and they're there. It's just that there has to be the will of that leader to allow the hiring process to happen. Also rebranding, quite possibly the teacher librarian is so much more pertinent than librarian, and no offense of anything, but in education, that just puts a different flavor on it. So we're working together and had some initial discussions and wanted to go forward.
The UN side has already done the paperwork that needs to be done to change the term school library media specialist to teacher librarian, which is part of that branding that we talked about, and the MSU side is currently working on that right now. So that's something that we both feel strongly about. Teacher librarian legitimizes teacher. It legitimizes librarians. It makes other teachers understand that they are teachers too.
Exactly.
And the school library media specialist kind of brings to mind the person who turned out to be, so we're
As a projector.
Right. So I mean, we've come a long way in our discussions. Out of our discussions, like the rebranding,
which I think will help not only other teachers to understand that that teacher librarians are teachers too, but also
Regarding legislation, I know there are 4 things right now that are in the hopper, but none of them have, I mean, generally revised could happen to any Chapter 20 thing of any kind, but keeping a finger on it, I think, is something that we can do together to help support any initiative.
How do you know that teacher librarians are improving their ability to provide good services to people and to support staff working schools? How do we know that?
I don't know if there's ever been a testimonial project where there's been any, I mean, maybe you can help. If there's been anything in the field that's been done before that has shared, this is what they're doing. Is there a state? I apologize.
Tracy gets what I'm getting at.
Okay.
Oh, good.
asked her about it. She talked about what's really cool about what OPI is doing. It's very much they're farther along in their process and what they're trying to do this together. Is the school has certain goals that they want to achieve and that they need to achieve to perform themselves. And those trickle down to the teachers and teacher librarians. And so what Colette and her team have done is created kind of a menu of options that are basically continuing education opportunities based physically and online that directly address the improvement of the teacher librarian that's tied to an outcome of school wants to achieve.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
And that can be something like improving reading skills, but it can also be improving the school culture. And then Colette has built in a series of ways to assess whether or not those teacher librarians have taken and applied it and what difference it made. So that was where Colette and I started to discuss how she's managing that.
You were having very rich conversations where other people were knocking themselves out trying to make coaching remarks in an established group.
As we know, timing is everything because of the new federal law of Every Student Succeed Act, ESSA. This is part of the inner workings of the OPI, is pulling all strings together for school culture and all teachers, not just, I mean, coaches, everybody, anyone, just to improve student learning. And it is student performance, not based on one test. It's student performance based on of what is going on within that school.
It seems to me that there would be a great deal of value of continuing to look for opportunities to foster organization and librarians and community librarians who are serving the same group of people, because it seems as if there I think would be a lot of the community librarians can learn from what is happening in the schools.
Excellent partnership. Yep. Excellent partnership.
Oh, but it's exciting. Actually, that is very cool. That's progress. Wow. Wow. Nothing to it.
So I don't know if it's necessarily.
Have a take a drink of water here. It's been a lift.
So I think what I'm hearing is that there isn't necessarily work objectives for the commission at this point, but more just making awareness.
If we could update,
Yeah, I think
probably do update at next commission meeting on what is transpiring, and possibly have Colette here to share.
And I think either with the introduction of the legislative session or otherwise for the commission, if they can chime in and contribute usefully to this process, we should do so. So we should need to be aware that we could at any moment spring into action that otherwise would be important.
I could be wrong on this, but it seems to me that the public library has more, has better political, and I don't mean that in a big P, but has better political cash than the school library, because you've got the school board and you've got your fellow teachers and the administration and all that. The public libraries tend to, they're more available to the general public. And if the public certified librarian can go through the program and find it successful and worthwhile, that would be a very good conduit into the school system that would empower the teacher librarian. because they're gonna hear from the general public more than the teacher librarian.
Mhm.
And if we were able as a commission to talk about this at the Federation meetings, because that's where they gather, maybe that would be a way to start, or am I so far behind the process?
That's actually a good thought. Maybe you should take and move that into the coming federation, current federation, just basically an update, and you guys should be watching this because it's good stuff here.
I think, yeah, that's a great idea, and I think that's something that we're not doing in the Federation. I mean, it's updating. So that what's going on with the teacher librarians, because public librarians should all be in the loop. They are the taxpayers' responders. They're doing something that's
And they go to their commissioners and talk about their budget needs and.
regularly. They know how. Yeah.
That would be a great link because funding public schools does come from taxpayers, which are the participants in the public libraries. Yeah.
Is the Library Association, has it discussed any of this kind of new round?
We have, and I think the Library Association would be in support, of course, of
Somewhat rounded up.
And for a lot of the public librarians, like I'm thinking of my little town of White Sulphur Springs, to be certified is, wow, that's something.
Someone's done some work.
Yes, and that's a boost for their education in libraries and just on their resume to be a certified librarian. Because a lot of them, we've had some librarians in White Sulphur that might not have graduated from high school. So this is something for them to further their personal growth.
One of the most amazing things that I think the state library does is to say that those press releases when the librarians do become certified, and because it gets in the small town newspapers, I don't know if it's in the larger newspapers or not, but it's news in the small town newspapers, and then people come up to this library and they don't necessarily understand what the article is about, but they say, oh, you won an award, or oh, you some kind of achievement, congratulations,
Yes.
and they laminate it and put it in the library, and it's wonderful. It's just great PR. So thank you for doing that.
And maybe if people could do for some talking points that you can share with others.
Any other discussion about the certified teacher librarians? That's great. I would love great news. That's perfect.
Bruce, may I just make a quick comment?
Please.
I think the certification of teacher librarians and using that verbiage of teacher librarians as well as our certified public librarians will really help move us forward and dispel the myth that librarians are just checking out books, or really what purpose are they serving, especially when we get into the schools, and it's so critical with the wealth of information that is available to our students, but how to discern what is good information and how to properly cite that information. And I know for my children, their teacher librarian is teaching those skills in first, second, third, fourth, fifth grade in the elementary school. And I think it is such a critical skill that we highlight in this age where we are bombarded with information from every angle. And even as adults, it's hard to discern where the factual information is and how to properly filter through everything that's available to us. So to share that with legislators and the general public, that critical role that we're teaching youth to be discerning citizens, it's really important. And I don't believe I believe teacher librarians shoulder the burden of that teaching more than any other teacher in the school system.
Good point. It certainly is a topical.
Yeah. One other thing that I wanted while Elsie's here too to talk with, to let you know, Nanette, and that's
we talked about, being the point person for information literacy in the school, but we've also talked about librarians as being the point person for IEFA, for Indian Ed for All. And that's something that a lot of teachers struggle with incorporating into their curriculum. And it's really a role that's natural, it's organic to the librarian to take that on. And so that's something that I think is important for you to know about because it's directly related to legislation, a great deal of legislation. Is that something? And that's something
constitutional.
And
constitutional.
Right? That's something that we've talked about because nobody has, officially accepted that in the school. It's really, I guess, up to the administrators right now. They're juggling so many things, and so both UM and UMW and MSU are the three schools with programs, and we have all made that commitment to infuse IFA materials heavily into all of our classes, technology, all of them, and because we want the librarians to be able to embrace that role. It hasn't officially been assigned to them, but it's something that we all agree is a good fit. Yeah, and so that's something that we'll talk more about, but just wanted to get that point.
Perfect.
Well, okay, good. Well, what else do we need to talk about? So maybe talk about the strategic framework. You want to comment briefly on some of the suggested things that the Commission considers for updating the framework?
There was a suggestion at your June meeting that perhaps the new chair and maybe who is the past chair work with staff to propose some updates in the October meeting. The one strategic framework area that staff feels is not necessarily reflected in the current strategic framework is more of a focus on training and consulting, all of the professional development and consulting work that we do. Staff would feel like that is different from creating a use of information infrastructure, which is more about information and the delivery of that information, and around partnerships, which is really working with partners within and external to the library. And so that's one thing that staff would want to see in updated strategic framework. And then I think it's just right and good that we continue to keep the strategic framework a living working document and to check in to see how relevant the framework is, make sure it is as useful. So that would be one suggestion.
How would folks think? Does that sound good?
I think especially with this being suggested by the staff, I think that's definitely something we need to happen.
Any other things that you see that need to be kind of attended to in the agenda?
Not me personally. Always check the staff to make sure the work planning process is effective. I also am thinking right now that maybe this would be a good opportunity to bring Jamie in, since she wasn't a part of the original strategic planning process, LCU as well. If you wanted more background on how that framework was developed.
So are you foreseeing maybe a special meeting of some sort from a subcommittee of commissioners in preparation for the October meeting? Okay, does that sound good to you?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's what we'll do. We'll schedule something and look forward to seeing from staff the proposal of what some of the language might look like and how that might work. Legislative session and FTE planning. You and I have had some sort of conversations about this, but at what point do you want to involve the Commission as a whole in this process?
So, just to bring you up to speed a little bit, Chris and I had a meeting with the Governor's Budget Office a couple of weeks ago where we were able to talk a little bit about our budget needs as the governor prepares his budget and going into the next legislative session. There was good support from the governor's office for working with us to keep some of the FTE that are currently vacant, but on the books and that were included in the snapshot for the next biennial budget planning. There are around 10 FTE as we fill a couple FTE that are vacant but would appear in the snapshot. The governor's office supports us seeking to keep 9 of those positions, and there's no money right now to fill those positions within this fiscal year, as we move forward next biennium. So within any proposed budget, based on the snapshot, we would have some funding in our budget to fill those positions next biennium after July 1. The real concern would be any action that might be taken during the legislative session to eliminate any vacant FTE. Right from the get-go, we've seen in previous sessions where the legislature has proposed in the early days of the session a global motion to eliminate some or all vacant FTE that exist within state government. And we're hearing that that's a likely possibility for this coming session. And so, there's a couple of scenarios that would lay out that would involve the state library working with the Library Association and other key stakeholders and support commission. If in fact there would be this kind of global motion, trying to write in some kind of an exemption for our small agencies to be exempted from that global motion. And we don't need to talk today in detail about what that exemption might look like. We could pick an FTE count or something like that. We can very clearly demonstrate the impact on the loss of 10 FTE to an agency with just over 30 FTE versus an agency with a few hundred positions vacant and several thousand FTE. So I think those are the kind of cases that we would want to make. If we were successful in getting an exemption, that would position us very well. If we weren't successful in that effort, then it would be a matter of working with our budget subcommittee to try to get back some of the FTE we've lost. Again, we're hearing from the governor's office that we have support to do that, but the likelihood of going into a budget subcommittee and getting 9 essentially new FTE, I think would be nearly impossible. We'd love to get 1 or 2. At that point in time, we definitely count on many of our stakeholders, including the Library Association, the Montana Association for the Blind, and some of the other pieces that we work with. So, I think right now I've had some conversations with Minette and John. We're trying to understand whether or not, in fact, this global motion is likely, and then be thinking now about who our key partners are that might help us in any kind of effort to get us exempted in that kind of global motion. And we lean on you as commissioners who may have relationships with the people to help us.
It may be that after the meeting today, the new chair of the board sit down and have a short discussion with the outgoing chair about the process. Do you have any thoughts from a MLA perspective?
No, I think we did have this conversation, and the possibility of a global motion to eliminate vacant FTE, I think really goes toward part of the majority party's effort to get toward that zero-based budgeting. So I think it's a real likelihood. I also think there is some understanding and compassion for small agencies. There's already some small agencies that have exemptions from agency savings. So I think the data would play out, like you said, that there are small agencies in state government that would be more able be beneficial to not be having this conversation in front of the subcommittee. Because at that point, the line is usually in the sand that we're gonna cut everybody by X amount, or we're gonna increase everybody by X amount. And they pretty much stick to whatever their global agreement is between the parties and the executive. So to work beforehand with the key legislators who will be making some of those decisions and make the case for small agencies would be a much better option than.
Do you have any questions or comments regarding this topic?
I think the one piece that is missing right now is I will be preparing next biennium budget in the month of August of this month. What usually comes in the big memo from the governor's office of what we can and can't do. And that's the piece that's missing right now. Is our instructions. Because you can say one thing, but when those instructions finally come out, we could be faced with negative EP, so taking some right off the top. Because right now, our FTEs do not balance to the funding in House Bill 2 that the legislature passed. So there's a big gap between those two that somebody's going to have to work out eventually. So I think we're still waiting for that memo to come out. I'm assuming I'll get it. I know they downloaded the budget this week. I'm assuming I'll get it next week. And that's a big piece that we're missing, the instructions from the governor.
Well, we'll just get her done. I mean, we got to get it done. So we'll make it happen. I mean, it's going to definitely take us all kind of working hard to. I think the whole notion of having basically making the case for the small agency exemption from any sort of global speech is probably the first most important thing to do. And then if that doesn't work, then we'll have to sort of claw our way up with individual sort of almost dog and cat sort of requests for positions, and that will be miserable and will disappoint a lot of our users.
I think, Mr. Chairman, that goes right to what an FTE is a person, for sure, but it's the work. It's the work that needs to be prioritized and then expressed to legislators, that this is the reason why the work needs to be completed, and it is to an individual that is that. It's not just a number on the book or a number in a budget line item. It's the work. So that's a priority that the commission can do, and within your good leadership, we can do this.
And I think that we have the documentation to back us up. So, to show that our loss in FTE, how much pressure that's put on us, and how much has been disrupted because of it. I mean, we've got the bi-monthly reports on what's stagnant, what's moving forward, what's been put to the wayside indefinitely because there's not staff there to do it. So I think the agency work plans really reflect the need for, we need people to do the work that needs to be done. So yeah, there's the work we can't do because we don't have the staff to do it. And ultimately, that third piece that the legislature is going to want to hear is how it affects the people of Montana. Because I think if it were just affecting our agency, nobody would really care. But when we turn around and say, there's this third most important piece, and it's trickle down, you get that FTE to do the work that then, makes lives easier for Montanans. So.
And it seems to me the folks most capable of arguing effectively for getting the work done are the people who the work is being done for, which kind of moves us on to the next bullet. Are you? Yep.
I think the other thing that the state library can really highlight is that, kind of back to Elsie's point with the work, that they, through the legislative action, we were able to
gain some efficiencies at the state library. And so you're not just simply asking for a full replacement, but you acknowledge that there were an overhaul and efficiencies gained, and you really identified where the deficits remain and what you need in order to continue to do the work. So to me, that's a really important point, not to just say we need everything that we lost, but you acknowledge that you looked at your entire system and make changes to be more effective.
Good point.
Yeah, every cloud does have a silver lining, as painful as the cloud was. I mean, you really have done a couple, there have been a couple good things that came out of this. Yeah.
This is helpful. Thank you.
It's very helpful. So when we talk about our partners, both in terms of just better being able to take and provide them services, but also partners for helping us make our case. So Mako is certainly one of them, I assume. Who are some of our other partners?
There's a long list within the GIS community and users of that data. Many have said that they're ready to stand up and help us. Folks within the Realtors Association, there was one last summer from the Coal Board or Coal Association who's very interested in helping us with that effort. On the Talking Book Library side, we have partners in the American Association for the Blind, the National Federation for the Blind, of course, the Montana Library Association. And one of the very direct impacts that the legislature is going to see this year is that we're not producing a legislative snapshot for them. The two key physicians who were responsible for compiling all of that data and then making it presentable to them were lost in the election, of course. We'll do our best to continue to maintain the mapping applications, our online map gallery, and some of that kind of information, so that legislators still have access to the data, but that customizable print that they receive each session is something we simply don't have the capacity to do that right now. So there's a very direct immediate impact to them, the information that they have.
At some point, it would be interesting to me, speaking personally, to have a sort of a better itemized understanding of where the holes were in our collection. And I'm thinking of, in this case specifically, of layers in our GIS data. And not only what is not being updated or obtained in a timely fashion or whatever, but also sort of the cost. One of the things I realized this year after talking with Evan was that I thought all of our GIS data was just free and it was just our time spent kind of rounding it up. And clearly that's not true. It's the opposite of true. It's false. And I had no idea really what the gap was in terms of collection development. It's almost like we were a library that needed to be spending, what's the magic number, $10 million a year on stuff, and we're spending a nickel. And it's just I think as a commissioner, it would be useful to know what that gap was and where the big holes were. When I read the information from Natural Heritage this time, talked about all the gaps in their data. That was very helpful in understanding where these books, which happen to be data sets, parts of maps, where they weren't being purchased, and really how dated our collection was from thinking of the book librarian kind of way of thinking. Sorry. I am old, aren't I?
Some of that information. Go ahead, Ken.
I was just gonna, I think I've said this before, but it's really quite good timing to have the 911 assessment finishing up in December, because that directly affects three major layers that are important to all Montanans in terms of public safety, and that's the road center line data, the site structures, and then emergency service boundaries. And the first two of those, roads and structures, are a key part of our Montana spatial data infrastructure. And what's cool about it is that, and again through MACO and the public safety officials, but it's that coordination effort that the state library plays in setting standards and best practices. It's a responsibility of the local government to prepare those layers, but that collaboration that we saw that made the parcel and cadastral and ownership data so valuable to everybody in public and private sector is going to also happen over the next 2 years with road center lines and structures. And even the most rural counties are going to be spending, 75 to 100,000. I mean, altogether, probably 4 to 5 million. We'll have a more accurate number when we get that assessment, but that's going to be perfect timing to show the value of that, and particularly for public safety, which is really crucial to both rural and urban Montanans across the board.
Well, that's good. Thank you, Ken. Right. And attaching dollar figures to this, even if it's just the dollar figures of the staff time to coordinate, as you're describing, Ken, it would be useful. It's for me, it's one thing to know that we're not quite, meeting our goals, but having an idea about how short we are in terms of money is helpful. Are we ready to kind of jump into looking at travel plans and decide who's going where and what we need to get to? There's a spreadsheet. Well, I think there are 2 documents in your packet that are helpful. One is the calendar, which the blue calendar, July, August, September notes that is linked from the agenda. But there's also a spreadsheet document, an Excel spreadsheet, which talks about kind of the tentative FY19 budget of $14,000 and sort of the expected cost. If I read this correctly, that we have around $3,300 sort of unobligated, and it seems to me that we agreed that the items which are obligated on this spreadsheet, which is to say regular meetings, the Library Association attendance, ALA legislation day, if we take it as kind of a granted that we're going to do those things, then it'd be a good time now to talk about what we're going to do in addition to those. Do you have thoughts?
Well, the 2 things that are listed below that, the Federation attendance, most commissioners are very good about attending those commission meetings, and I understand that you guys sometimes don't request travel reimbursement for those. Of course, you're welcome to do so, encourage that. But we also want to see commissioners at those Federation meetings. And if we could at this meeting talk about who might be able to attend the fall meetings, that would be helpful. Right now, I don't have a dollar amount assigned to that attendance. Usually, it's maybe a couple of days, maybe an overnight, so it's not a lot of money. If commissioners were to claim travel reimbursement for those meetings, and then I think it has been useful to send Commissioner Penn to at least one of the district meetings. But I don't think we can afford to send someone to both the annual and midwinter. Jamie, that's the National States Geographic Information Committee. Council. It's a council of all of the state GIS coordinators, and so they're talking about GIS opportunities that exist at the state level. And Ken Law has attended a few of those.
And that travels around the state, or is it?
It's nationally. In October there will be a meeting in Duluth, Minnesota. I don't remember where Midwinter is.
What have we typically budgeted for the year?
I don't know that what we've typically spent is probably in the neighborhood of $2,000.
So it would eat up most of our balance. It strikes me that we keep talking about MACO meetings. What would it cost to get a commissioner to more of the state MACO meetings?
They typically have a couple of their annual statewide meetings a year. I don't know where are they going to put it on?
September is their next meeting. They don't really get to go in there.
Would it be useful to have a commissioner there? You agree?
With session, they'll probably come. They always have their meetings during the session.
Yeah, during the winter, we'll probably in February.
You
Yeah,
know, we're trying to create an opportunity here. I definitely think so, and we typically have a booth there in their vendor area, and we always have really great interaction with different commissioners who are there. I think the more we can elevate the state library's presence with different commissioners, the better. It's true. I have to leave. I promise to be back though.
Okay,
So,
good.
The celebration should last.
Like, I get it. We'll save this slice. Absolutely.
Good.
Good.
Thank you. Good luck with your. Oh, it's a wonderful celebration. It's a Montana proud celebration. We need to do more celebrating about what we do.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank
I agree. So, any other things that you think that we should be sending commissioners to? We have NASDAQ, we have NACO. What other kinds of things like that should we be focused on?
I wanted
John?
to,
I'm sorry.
The National Library Legislative Day this year is not a standalone day like normal years because the American Library Association conference is going to be in DC next June. So legislative day will be placed during that. But there might be some combination of the legislative.
Okay. I'm sorry.
no, mine was similar. The library legislative day. I'll ask if I can go, but probably not to ALA. And so my hope was that I would be able to do something here, to bring library legislative day to the state for librarians who can't travel to DC to do that. And I think this room would be a great place to do that in. And so I would probably request, I think it would be unreasonable for us to cover people's expenses, but if they could get here at, maybe we could get them lunch or budget some amount of money to make that happen. Because you can do the online registration, but what I was envisioning was having people do the online registration, but coming here to make it more of an event. And then instead of just listening to the people online talk, have some panel discussions of people who have attended or people who are experts in the particular topics that they're talking about, and to make it a Montana legislative day. And I think that ALA encourages states to do that. I hadn't specifically heard them say that they do, but I think they would be.
So we would go and
happy.
visit the local offices.
Yes, afterwards.
Yeah.
I think that would be a great part. But to start with that day of speakers, there's always that day of speakers where we learn about advocacy and we learn about the issues at hand, and that's wonderful. But we are sending the same people to hear many of the same speakers over and over again, where the people who are here in Montana haven't necessarily had that opportunity to hear that. And I don't know how that would work with sending people into offices, although I think that's a great idea because they really are, the speakers really are geared towards national legislation. So that would be something to think more about and to think really strategically about if we were to send people out, exactly what their talking points are going to be when they go and talk to their legislators, but also, to make sure that they're very informed about those. Let's pick 3 talking points, that they would go and speak to. But for them to be a part, for people from Montana to be a part of the National Library Legislative Day without actually trying to come up with the funding to go to DC, I don't know if it would work, but I think it would be interesting to try. I think it would be great to try. I think it would build.
And would that be appropriate use of funds?
But I think we could find other funds to do that.
Okay.
We know that we can take that out of the commission's budget.
Okay.
One of the things that we did previously when I was with the humanities, but you can translate when they have National Book Fair on
On the mall?
the mall. Yeah. I always made sure that I invited the wives of our delegation, and there are Montana authors there, and they have a great time. Phyllis Burns was a teacher and she loved it, but that's a possibility.
That's a good
I
idea.
will be back in I believe it's like the second week in March, and would be happy to do my regular logging and then set up an appointment at a later hour in the day to talk about libraries, if that would be any help.
The more we visit topics, I think the better. And there's always opportunities to talk about different things with them.
Because you see different staff. The staff people I'm talking about are ag, and they're not going to, they might be libraries.
Yeah. We talk about libraries, we talk about broadband, we talk about geospatial data, legislation.
So, so back to the spreadsheet. To focus on this, but it sounds like federation meetings, something we should probably do. NESJEC is going to eat a big chunk of the balance. Is that correct? If we send someone to that,
I think it would.
So,
If we were thinking about a commissioner at a MACO meeting here in Helena,
the costs are very
minimal. Right, exactly. I would love to have commissioners do that, and I don't think we should worry about that cost.
I tried to pull up where the annual conference is, and they don't have it.
They don't.
MACO is
it Missoula?
16th through 20th.
Okay.
And I don't know if you heard that. It's step. I know this is step away from
What is it, September?
September 16th through 20th.
So do we? So it seems to me that we do need a little bit of action about our priorities. So, should we just assume that the first three items of the regular meetings, MLA and ALA legislative day, we sort of accept them as presented and budgeted on the spreadsheet at $7,200, $1,500, and $2,000 respectively items? Any objection to doing that?
So moved.
Okay, and then to add to that, if we may, and then of course we need this official ad stuff. Do we want to say that how much do we want to take and put? Are we is NESJEC something that we want to go to? Not people nodding their heads, yes. And how much money should we basically budget for that?
I think some of these budget allocations, I hope they're conservative. So I think we built in some flexibility in the budget. I don't know that necessarily
You don't need a number.
need a number if the commission is comfortable with that.
So we'll just say that NESJEC is also a priority. Nodding heads, is that sort of getting? And then, do I hear maybe helping with getting people to MACO is another priority? Is that kind of agreed? And that seems, Amy, does that seem useful to you?
It does.
One who knows?
It does.
Okay. So we have agreement for that. Are there any other things that we should be thinking about besides the federation meetings that we need to?
Well, this is Ken. One other MACO associated thing is I think it can be quite useful is they have regional meetings in much like the federation meetings in MACO of groups of counties. I think there's 5 or 6 of them. But that's a smaller session and regional, and particularly if as commissioners we can attend ones that are near our home base. Wouldn't involve a lot of travel. It's a smaller group, but I think it's a way to build stronger relationships with MACO, just much like going to federation meetings. I don't know exactly how many or how often those are. I think they're typically quarterly. But particularly for legislative coordination, I think that might be a good one to try to slip in there as well.
It sounds like some of those meetings are happening next week around the state. So I can send out a link to that information and be sure that those meeting dates are on your calendars as well.
That'd be great.
And those regional meetings are open meetings, public meetings?
I believe so, yes.
I believe so, yes.
And I think they typically do their district meetings in the spring, and then they do a second round in August, especially prior to a legislative year. The meetings are all next week, and they will really be focusing on what resolutions they will bring forward to their annual conference in September and going through their fiscal resolution process.
So that'd be useful to be there for that.
And
Okay.
at some point, if there were an opportunity for a collaborative project between the state library and NACO, that's really the avenue that they direct people in to have the resolution be brought forth up from the district meeting to the annual meeting level to be taken forward this legislation.
Good to know. Excellent. Sounds like that's doable. Good. So, may we have a motion then to sort of accept the overall plan, not necessarily with the numbers, worrying about the numbers too much, but with regular meetings, MLA, ALA, Federation meetings, and NASJEC, I have trouble with that for some reason, sorry, and NACO as sort of our on our dance card for this coming year. Is there a motion to that effect?
So are we approving budget and calendar?
We're going to get to the calendar, and I thought we'd just get the budget out of the way because that's the money thing, and then we'll just get volunteers for the calendars. I thought how we would do it. I don't think that requires an action. It just requires us to sort of commit to showing up.
I already sort of moved it.
Okay, good. So good enough, and a friendly amendment, sort of. And second? Was there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Anne. Any further discussion? So, in favor of moving forward with those general, oh, it is, okay.
How about that?
Anne is showing me a map that looks an awful lot like a Federation map, but it's a MACO map. Good, good, good. Maybe a copy of that would be splendid. You can make some copies.
Okay.
May I have a vote, please? All in favor of travel budget as discussed?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? Thank you very much. Motion carries. So let's move along back to the calendar, looking at the July, August, September, looking at the Federation meetings. And we need commissioners to show up at, it looks to me like, to begin with, the Broad Valleys, Golden Plains, and South Central meetings.
I already have my invitation to Broad Valley, and that one will be a teleconference.
So BVF is going to be Ann.
And where's that?
On the phone.
This is Ken. I was gonna plan on the Broad Valleys in Butte this year. I can make that one, and then also the Tamarack Online.
Broad Valley's in Butte. That one's in the spring.
Oh, I thought it was in September. It's in the spring.
It's in Butte in the spring, and it's online in September.
So,
John is
okay.
the coordinator. He's here for that, and he has sent that out. That would be great.
so,
And I can go to both of those, but it would be great for you to come too, Ken. That would be fun.
so Ken, I see.
Okay.
Are you then volunteering for the Tamarack meeting on October 17th?
Yes.
Great, thank you very much. That's helpful. So moving back to Golden Plains. So Golden Plains, where's that?
Wolf Point.
Wolf Point. Who can be at the Golden Plains meeting?
If someone can't attend that one in person, we'll typically set up a go-to meeting for someone to be able to attend remotely as well.
So that is September 27th.
I can go, if nobody can go in person, I can go remotely.
Golden Plains, and that's in Wolf Point.
Yes.
So why don't I volunteer for that?
Okay.
I'm not unvolunteering, but we lean. So it's
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out what those days are too.
So that's Bruce. And then we have South Central. And where is South Central this year?
The Stanford.
In Stanford.
And that is at their newly expanded library. So
And actually, I would kind of like to go to that.
And what date is that?
29th.
Well, why don't I go volunteer if there's no objections? I'd like to go to the one in Stanford. And I'll just make a little road trip out of it.
No, I don't have the Cal Bible with me. So when I look at the Cal Bible, because we have everything from January
Timed.
all the way through. And I'll look at that and see what of these dates would be open. And I would
just email me, Jean, that'd be great.
That'd be great. So Pathfinder, the main two are Pathfinder and Sage.
Yeah.
If I am not traveling, I can attend Pathfinder, but I may be in Alaska. So it's in Fort Bend. That might be a good one to go to.
So we'll put you down tentatively, Aaron, for Pathfinder, and the last is Sage, which is in Miles City. You hear a volunteer for Sagebrush.
Maybe we can talk to Kenny too about
Yes.
attendance.
We'll say Kenning with a question mark. So Sagebrush, tentatively for Kenning, Broad Valleys for Ann, and perhaps Ken, Hamarack for Ken, Pathfinder for Aaron, tentatively, Golden Plains and South Central for Bruce. Lovely.
And I could, if I can do a backup on the Pathfinder if that's
Okay, thank you, Ken. Great.
necessary.
Perfect. Excellent. Okay. Nothing to it. All right. What else do we need to think about there? I think we're good. State Library?
Well, we talked a little bit about FTE planning in the legislative session, so it's, we'll really appreciate your support as we're gearing up for that. I think we really want to try to get our ducks in a row, and as Chris said, find out what kinds of instruction we're going to see from the governor's office. But cautiously optimistic moving forward there. We have the continued work with the nonprofit development in the steering committee. That steering committee is meeting here tomorrow. Stu will be here tomorrow from Library Strategies. We're really focusing right now on the creating the articles of incorporation, the draft bylaws. We have to name this thing. That I think is going to be one of the biggest challenges. What do we want to call this nonprofit? But that is necessary to go forward with actually incorporating as a 501c3. And then we're beginning to talk about recruiting what will become a board of directors and largely a fundraising board for this nonprofit. And so again, that group is meeting tomorrow morning. We're going to do a ground-based lunch with staff tomorrow at noon to get them up to speed and to keep good open communication with staff about this work. And then I'm going to invite Stu to participate in my Friday website chat to update the library community about that kind of work. Right now we have meetings scheduled with some folks within the community, Dennis Mueller, Stephanie Ambrose Tubbs, working on scheduling a meeting with Bruce Meadows, who we hope will be interested in helping to move this effort forward. So I think we're making good progress there, and we're seeking feedback from members of the steering committee about other potential donors, other potential board members to continue. Questions? I know Jamie doesn't have a lot of time to do about this one.
Yeah, we can do a backlog of all the former council commission members.
For the nonprofit, brand new. Does not exist at this point, so there's no formers at this point.
No, but I mean, as potential donors, I mean, do you keep is there a list of all the commissioners from time immemorial to present?
Oh, there is.
That will get a lovely letter.
There is, yeah.
That's an excellent idea.
Yeah, when we hadn't thought of it.
We are really just learning about this stuff. I don't think many of us are thinking as strategically as we might about fundraising.
We talked in previous meetings about work that was going on within the Environmental Quality Council. They were looking at funding for the Montana Natural Heritage Program. As you know, they had considered a number of different options, including the potential of allocating a portion of the fee from the Montana Environmental Policy Act and environmental assessment and environmental impact statement fees towards the data for the Montana Natural Heritage Program. We talked about funding through the bed tax. They had talked about sort of a network connection or device fee within state government. Ultimately, the EPC chose not to carry forward with any of those pieces of legislation. There was a motion at their July EPC meeting to work through House Appropriations to appropriate $300,000 in general fund for the program. That motion failed on a tie vote, five-party line vote, and then ultimately what the EPC chose to do was to write a letter to the executive expressing support for funding for the Heritage Program in the governor's budget. So the council's working on that. I think that's sort of where it will end. The encouraging thing that came out of that review was just the level of awareness now that those members of the legislature have about the importance of the data, and they all spoke very, very highly of the value they see in the Heritage Program and the DMS program more largely, and good support there. So I'm not surprised that they didn't come out with any kind of funding solutions, and I am encouraged that they all spoke very highly of the program. I hope it was worth our while. I also wanted to share and pass around some updates from the public awareness campaign that we're working on with Bannock Communications out of Great Falls. We have a group of librarians and folks within the GIS community that are providing feedback to them about logos and taglines and how they're approaching this public awareness campaign. We're starting to settle in on branding that plays on the on logo, Montana Libraries on, and references to power. I'll go ahead and send these examples around, and working on some taglines like Montana Libraries, information powers growth, information to power growth, information to grow on, information powers our economy. So I'll share these. I'm also sharing a list of people that they are going to be interviewing and creating short videos, people from within different economic sectors to talk about the importance of information to their work. We've really sort of settled on trying to keep economic development as the umbrella for this public awareness campaign and the importance of libraries and access to good information to support more economic development. I think we're making progress there. They're creating posters and other kinds of marketing material that will be distributed around the state. One of the key things that we're looking for from them ahead of the Federation meetings are toolkits that will go out to libraries that they can actually use with their patrons and hopefully get their patrons as constituents to communicate this information to their legislators. So we'll be distributing those kits at the Federation meetings this fall. And then also after the election, we'll actually begin the ad campaign on television with some of these ads and information going out ahead of and then up through the legislative session.
I'm on, I don't know what it's called that I'm on, but I'm on the thing where they send out, Randy sends you get to vote on the taglines and the logos that you like.
Good idea. Yeah.
What is that called? It's a task force, right? Yeah. Okay. So anyway, we all voted, and then there was a second vote. The second vote didn't have the one that I voted for, and I thought probably other people voted for it. So I asked Randy, and I voted for Libraries Power the Economy. And so, so that disappeared on the second round of voting. So I asked why that disappeared, and Randy said that Libraries Power the Economy was the overwhelming favorite in the first round. But a number of folks pointed out that there's no data to support that statement. So the company got rid of that as an option. And I don't know why I'm on this group, but I wasn't in a meeting about that or anything. I don't know who decided that. I think it's strange that you need data to support a tagline. I see a lot of taglines that I don't think there are any data to support. So I'm just going to register that that I disagree with getting rid of the best tagline because there's no data. And then switching it to information powers our economy perhaps seems to be one of the leaders because information and libraries are two different things. And I think people typically would say information isn't, the library isn't the number one place where they get their information. So I really think it negates the message to switch it from libraries to information. So I don't know. I don't know what meeting that happened in or who. I also think it's very strange to pay a company to come up with a great tagline for you, and then they do, and then you somebody votes it down.
Well, in full disclosure, I was in the office, and it got run under my nose out of courtesy, and my response was, speaking personally, when I'm presented with a slogan of any sort that doesn't seem to be obviously true, then because I'm kind of a inquiring kind of guy, I just sort of react against it. I think, it claims. If it's not true, or if it's not obviously true, or pretty much most people would think it's obviously true, I think that it's a mistake to make assertions that are just sort of aren't necessarily true.
So you don't think libraries power the economy?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
So it may have been for me. I don't know what the process was, but my response was it was not. I wish that was true, but I don't believe it is true. And I think that a lot of people, when they would see that, it's almost like saying Montana has the best beaches in the United States.
Well, I don't think so. I mean, I think libraries do power the economy. I think your broader statement of information powers the economy is even more all-encompassingly true. But I don't think that libraries are. I think that libraries are a part of that. I don't know what the process was. I think it's weird that if we wanted to just talk amongst ourselves and come up with information powers our economy or whatever it is that we wanted to come up with, we didn't need to pay a company to do that. And so.
Noted.
Thank you.
I was thinking, so just your conversation, looking at it, marketing wise, I don't know if it was Montana Libraries and then just Power the Economy, or if it was Montana Libraries Power the Economy, the redundancy of words. Having information there implies that you get your information from the library. Montana Libraries is bigger. That I'm thinking of electronically would be really nice to have more than one what we're powering and then have that flip. Like if it's an electronic and as it's there, that last word each is different and each one is maybe a different color. And so in the 5 seconds you're looking at it, it says Montana Libraries, Power, Economy, Growth, whatever. That would be really fun to.
Yeah, I get it. I think so too. I just if we can sit here and pick it, then why do we hire somebody who's an expert in the field to pick a logo and a tagline? I think they might know more than I know.
Doubtless, they know more than all of us know, but yes.
And I do think the intent isn't to just have one tagline. I think the intent is to have a tagline that can serve many purposes, to reach many sectors, to have something that sort of revolves, as Erin suggests. We did really want to keep the libraries in some kind of tagline, which is why the library font is actually larger than it was when it was just a part of a tagline. So I don't know that there is going to be just a single tagline, but something that can serve multiple purposes is what benefits communication. So it sounds like we have more of a communication issue as well, that we need to make sure we're communicating process between Janet and the group of people that are providing it as well.
I mean, it was presented as though it was a vote, but it was not. It was not a vote. So I don't know what. I don't think there's any reason to call for votes. And then just do something else.
I guess I need to apologize because I didn't realize it was in the process if we were asking for people to vote. We were asking for feedback.
Oh, okay. Okay. So most of the people, but so we got the feedback, and then what most of the people picked is not what we did. But not based on what the experts suggested. Yeah, maybe it's a communication issue. Or maybe it's a process issue. I'm not sure. I think that.
Well, I look forward to seeing that process go forward. And I'm sure that we'll end up with some good stuff.
Good. I just have a few more quick updates. The other thing we learned in our meeting with the Governor's Budget Office, in previous meetings we talked about a program inventory that we had to submit where we spelled out the various programs, our statutory priorities and how they aligned with the work and the programs of the library. We've been told that that's not necessarily going to play into the budgeting process at this point. The Budget Office wasn't really able to garner a lot of data based on how that information was compiled. So at this point, that information's been collected, but we don't think it's going to inform the process. And then just finally, an update on the recruitment process for the Central Services position. It is posted through the State of Montana job system. It's available on our website. The initial round of screening will begin on August 20th, and so applicants are encouraged to apply by August 19th. We'll be screening for the last 10 days. Our hope is to have interviews scheduled the week of September 10th, and we don't know how many interviews. It will depend on the number of candidates and how they fall out in the screening process. We have a group of staff who will be involved in the screening, including myself and Chris, and some of the other staff that Chris supervises and people that are involved in managing budgets. And then the interview team will be myself and Chris and Tracy and Evan and Carol Churchill, one of the accounting tech that this position supervises. And we would love for at least one member of the commission to be on that interview committee if at all possible. We think it's really important for this commission to be really comfortable and confident with the person who's selected for this position. So if that would fit into someone's schedule, again, I don't have a lot of details other than we're targeting that week of September 10th. But we appreciate that involvement.
I'll be in town that week beginning on the 11th for sure. But I'm more than happy to, if another commissioner wants to do this, or Amy, I'm happy to pass that privilege on. But if I am in town, what is?
I'm completely unavailable. I'll be hiring staff at that same time. So, bye-bye.
Get used to hearing about the cow Bible.
I can't wait to see the cow Bible.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing the cow Bible, actually.
Good.
And shall I just put that, I'll mark it on my calendar to be around for that. So,
If all goes well, we hope to have someone hired by October 1st, so we'll have a little bit of overlap between Chris's final day, which is October 12th.
When they sign a contract that is completely binding.
For the next 35 years.
Exactly.
oops. So can we state it's going to start on the 11th? Is that a same thing?
Yep.
So sometime between the 11th and the 14th. Lovely.
And then you have the new program work plans in your commission materials. I know Evan is still working on getting you some documents tied up with a few other things recently. But those are out there, and we'll begin reporting to you on work plan priorities for the coming year. I've lost two of the managers, so if you have any questions for
It was
those.
it was a noble cause. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay,
Can we take a 5?
we certainly can take a 5.
If we're done, Jenny?
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Let's take 5. Have you been told where the facilities are?
Hey, Ken, I've got a
There you go.
Camel.
Go ahead, Ken.
I've got a doctor's appointment here for about an hour, so I'll probably be off for about an hour, and then I'll rejoin you.
Thank you very much. Good luck. I hope you get good news.
Okay. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Eventually it could be over though.
Yeah.
Potentially. I'll email.
Not every word, but that's the point. I spent a lot of time on the orange, yellow, which I still can't read, but I barely was able to with the red.
Are you colorblind? Or just?
I'm challenged.
He's old.
in so many ways. You don't have time for this. But what I liked particularly about it was it did a superior job of lining out kind of. I could see what your thinking was. These are the parts that are running smooth as silk. These are the parts that need a little work. And these are the parts that are just basically we're throwing up our hands until we get more resources. And of those, these are the ones that are really critical, and these are the ones that are just we really should do that. I thought that was extraordinarily helpful. And I know we've gone round and round and talked about reporting, and I really like the red light, green light, what is it? Red, yellow, green. So I can just sort of glance at it and see. But in the case of your report, I thought it was the level of detail was really, really very helpful to me and gave me as a commissioner a feel for how much money we're short. I mean, or some big guess of what we really need to do to fund your program. So at the level it should be funded. So thank you very much. I think very, very helpful.
No problem. The report, just incidentally, I think is also very informative for us internally in terms of sticking our head up and going, where are we? Because day to day it's pretty chaotic. So, yeah. Well, I'll start. We will go ahead and move forward one down. Or you know, there you go. Just to get everybody on the same page in terms of budget history, since FY08, our budget had remained static. That's that upper black line. Those are actual dollars. And then SB 261 cuts brought us down to 238,709. So that red line is adjusted to $7. So it's an overall 56% reduction in buying power that the program has had with $4 since that time. Next slide. We have been asked as a result of the SB 261 cuts to come in front of the Environmental Quality Council and present to them. These slides are some of the slides that we showed to them. And we've got FY 13 through 17 on the left there, FY 18 that we're currently in, and then what we think is a sustainable level of funding. And really the take home on the right. The take home message here is if you look at the orange portion of the pie chart there, it's not really big enough to sustain the core functions of the program at this point. And
And so we are asking the state to, up their commitment to the program and to keep it viable. And we think it's a very good deal. If you look at the size of that yellow and the dollars that are associated with that, we leverage the dollars that the state is providing to a really great extent. The supplemental core, the kind of tan color there, is funding that's provided to our program from our federal and state and private partners. And they just say, we love what you do, keep doing it, here's a contribution to that effort. So, essentially that orange and tan together make up our core budget, and the projects are very focused on specific deliverables. We are concerned that we're skewing too far towards that and not getting our core mission done. So, next slide. So what we're asking for to make the program whole and sustainable from a state core funding level is an additional $311,000 a year. And then part of the reason that we are in budgetary problems is that it's very related to the success of our program, in that our program is a statutory program in the state library, but it's contracted, the operation program is contracted out to the University of Montana. That gives us a lot of flexibility. I think it really helped us respond to these budget cuts. We would have been pretty devastated if we hadn't had that flexibility in the university environment. But because it's under the contract, we don't get those present law adjustments or cost of living increases. So those are the 2 points that we made to members of the Environmental Quality Council. Next slide. And just to give you a feel, the top portion of this slide is our core positions within the program. Again, the orange is core funding from the state, tan or peach is supplemental core funding, and yellow is project dollars. And to note that core funding, these are purely the core positions here. None of our positions are fully covered with core. In fact, none of them are covered with any more than, all of them are less than half covered with core. And so the bottom there is the sustainable core staff funding mix. And we pointed out to members of the Environmental Quality Council, any of these positions will be fully funded. We want to continue to leverage with our partners. We think it's essential to have our partners have monetary buy-in to the program and help provide us direction. And that way we're providing the products that they need to do their jobs. Next slide. One of the highlights, so that's just the funding background, and I thought what I'd focus on is the highlights of this past year. We finalized this environmental summary report, and I'm going to pass that around, as well as an example of a common field guide. I'll put that right there. But this last year, we were able to put all of our data products into one report and generate these reports very quickly on the fly with our map viewer web application. So each of these reports, essentially you can zoom into anywhere in the state, you can select a watershed, you can hand delineate an area of interest, and you'll get back a report on the species of concern that are documented there, the species of concern that are potentially occurring there, because we've created predictive distribution models for species. It'll give a summary of all of the surveys, the formal protocol surveys that have been done, something like a electrofishing survey for fish, a mist netting session for bats, pond survey for amphibians, anything where a protocol has been followed. It'll give a summary of the land cover breakdown for that area. It'll give a summary of the wetland riparian mapping that's been completed in that area. It'll give a breakdown of the land management status, and then the biological reports. And then finally, something that's brand new here that I'll spend a little bit more time on is it'll give a summary of the invasive and pest species that have been documented in that area. Next slide. One of our most heavily used web applications is the Montana Field Guide. It gets this year, well, I should say it this way. Across all of our web applications, we saw pretty universal, somewhere between a 4 and an 8% increase in use this last year, depending on various stats. The field guide did go up by 4.5% in terms of hours of use. So it's used 58.5 hours on the average workday, it always makes me happy to say that. It's kind of mind-boggling to think that, every single day, 58.5 hours of use. 89% of that use is in the U.S., 36% of it is from Montanans. So it's getting use across the country and across the globe. We think in part because of people coming here on vacation, and also in part because we just have a good product that is ranked highly in the Google search. So typically we'll be somewhere between 1, 2, and 3 on any species that someone is clearing out. So that equates to just under 400,000 unique users this last year, which again is a 5% increase over the year before. 1.37 million page views, again almost a 5% increase. And then as an example that's going around there, you'll see a custom field guide. We're getting 25 of those downloaded every day off of the main field guide. So one other note of interest, you can see on the U.S. map there on the right, cities that are heavily using our field guide, and you'll notice there that Salt Lake City is actually the #1 user of our field guide. Partly that's probably because of federal employees that are there, and again probably also travel stuff. Dallas, Texas, when I showed this to the Department of Commerce, these stats, they said, oh, those are places we recruit for tourists in Montana. So, yeah. So one really great development with the field guide this last year, and the way we've actually been able to stay afloat as a program, has been to incorporate invasive species information into our database. It's a invasive species control efforts have a lot of political wind behind them right now, and DNRC, we applied for a grant with DNRC to fund integration of the invasive species information into our database, and we got around $200,000 grant to do that. So in this last year, 187,000 observation records for invasive species, 42,000 structured surveys, and that's for, we added almost 700 non-native species to our databases, and then updated the field guide. So you can see we've got a separate field guide for aquatic invasive species, noxious weeds. That's broken down by state noxious weeds and also county listed noxious weeds. We got a field guide for forest pests, agricultural pests, and then all other non-native species. And then also biocontrol species that are released to control those invasive species. So I still think it's a super exciting time. Like you kind of go, oh, geez, these budget cuts, but honestly, people are still pretty motivated, and it's an exciting time because we're doing these new things, and the agencies have been really giving us feedback that it's about time. This should have been done a long time ago. So, next slide.
It's amazing what you can do with money.
Yes, exactly. One other thing that we've done, both to help the overall nature serve network, so there are heritage programs in all 50 states and Canadian provinces. So to help that network out, but also help ourselves out, we basically put out this idea that we would like to develop a common field guide for that entire network. And that way, a state like, say, North Dakota that has one heritage employee could maybe pop up a field guide and show species in their state. They don't have a web programmer, but if we can put this platform up, they could populate it and then have that product for their state. We've done this now for the state of Utah. That's provided us $25,000. Wyoming has provided us 10 and is about to provide us another 25. So we have draft field guides up running for both of those states. And again, the goal here is to just create that platform that individual states can plug in, and also NatureServe, which is a parent organization of all those heritage programs. And this would allow us to do two things. Why it's a great thing for our program. Not only is it keeping us afloat, it's allowing us to update the code that runs our field guides. So we're essentially having other states pay for that. They get benefit, we get benefit. By creating that common resource across the network, we're spreading the risk. So one thing that keeps me up at night is, oh my gosh, what happens if my web programmer, he has a motorcycle? Which you can sell it. But what happens if he crashes on his motorcycle or something, right? Like we would be sunk. But if we spread that risk out and have other programmers involved, which we are involving other programmers, then we reduce the risk to the whole network. And we also can do things like you could be on a species account and you can see, well, what does Wyoming say for this species, or what does North Dakota or South Dakota say for this species. So it should help out our partners. Next slide. Highlights for the botany program. We really, just as an overall strategic approach here, we've reduced our effort greatly in terms of centralizing zoology data, and we've just said plants are kind of behind in terms of data centralization, so we've kind of ground to a little bit of a halt animal data because of the budget cuts, but we are centralizing plant data as much as we can with the $4 that we have remaining. And that's also allowed us to start producing these predictive habitat suitability models. That's been important for two reasons. Plants don't have a lot of survey effort for them. And so if you draw a little polygon anywhere on that map there, anywhere in the state, there's a chance that there's just never been a high chance that there's never been a survey for a plant species. So with these predictive habitat suitability models, biologists and resource managers can say, okay, there's been no surveys or no detections, but this model is saying that this is highly suitable habitat for this species. As part of our environmental review process, we might want to go do surveys. So it's very exciting to start getting these predictive habitat suitability out for plants. Next slide. There's a couple more. Ecology program update. We updated the land cover 2017 information. We added the latest fire polygons from all the fires that occurred in 2017 and updated the previous burns into whatever habitat types they now are. We added the agricultural updates from the Department of Revenue, final land use categories, added roads and structures. And in the case of the wetland riparian mapping, again, it's kind of slowed down. Funding is slowed down. 55 quads is not as many as we'd like to see. Those blue USGS quadrennial maps and the map above it there have not been mapped yet. Those are the ones that are remaining, but we've got 85% of the state done. We've held a meeting with our partners to try to maintain our staffing capacity on that front. I think we've got enough buy-in that we can at least maintain staffing. It may take a while to get all this done, but we can maintain our existing staff. And then I wanted to introduce Jessica Mitchell. She is sort of the great future of our ecology program. We hired her as a spatial analysis lab director on the UM campus. And really the goal of that position is to leverage research that's going on at the university and then make that information available to our partners. Linda Vance had previously been simultaneously the ecology program lead and the spatial analysis lab director, but without having someone on campus directly tied into folks, just not enough time to really build those bridges. So we're hoping to see that. Jessica's background is remote sensing, and so that land cover, and I think also for the wetland riparian mapping, that expertise is going to be great for working on future developments in those layers, and very happy to have her. So one of the things that I have to say that in Jessica's interview process, she did a full interview process at the university, then a full interview process here, and then she went back to the university, and she's also got a joint appointment at another interview process. So she's in the got to get this right here. W.A. Frank College of Forestry. She's also an assistant research professor under the Department of Ecosystem and Conservation Sciences. So as part of the interview process, we've already built those bridges that we were hoping to build. And then the other thing I wanted to say is that Jessica was saying in the interview process, you know, how do you use GIS? He asked the question, how do you use GIS in your daily, your personal life? And so she and her husband have cows, and she was using some reflectance meters to look at forage quality for cows in the personal life. So I thought, that's a good tip.
I need you.
Next slide. And then the zoology program, you know, I mentioned we kind of cut back on focusing on zoology data. We were able to append a couple of very large data sets. That's why that number is so high. But all the predictive habitat suitability modeling effort for species of concern and potential concern. So in the vertebrate realm, we're fully covered now with models, which again is a great way to get that information out in cases where there aren't surveys on the ground. Updated conservation status ranks for 118 species, and then a great deal of project work has been focused on bat species like this little northern myotis in the bottom left there. This species was just recently detected in Montana for the first time since 1978. And that is the lower Missouri River below Fort Peck that we're seeing there. What we think is the actual range of the species. We didn't have enough survey effort before to really determine that. So we're still nailing down that. And those little polygons there that are yellow are indicating some habitats. Next slide. And finally, I just wanted to mention a logic model, inputs, outcomes, impacts. I can tell you my feeling about this has kind of gone up and down. What I really appreciate about it is we need to be thinking about the impacts that we're having and not just saying input, output. So I like extending it like that. One thing that we struggle with is how do we assess the impacts? And so what we did at the very beginning of the report that you guys got was just providing comments that our users had given to us. And so, and they're very complimentary. So I'd encourage you to read those. At this point, that's about as much effort as we possibly can undertake. We would love to do a return on investment study and see how much we're saving our partners. But again, we're sort of treading water, staying afloat at this point. So thanks for your time. Yeah.
I have a question about connections with MSU. Is there an equivalent connection with, I don't know what research is being done in both.
Our biggest connections that we want to make, especially with SPIS position, are with the Northern Rocky Mountain Science Center, NOROC, the USGS. They have some remote sensing stuff going on. And then also the NRCS has their state offices and state conservationists in Bozeman. And I think there's a lot of untapped, like your comment, right? Like I think there's a lot of things that we can do with remote sensing that is just a new realm for us, and it's pretty exciting. Jessica's here for the day to meet with various representatives and state agencies today to find out how we can build partnerships.
So this is tied with the University of Montana.
Correct.
I keep reading that they're suffering from financial woes. Is that going to impact your projects, or is there external or other funding that?
The answer is no. Their main problems are just low student census, so they need to recruit more students. The research at the university is really fired up and has really grown in recent years. And they do contribute an additional $50,000 a year to our program for that supplemental core funding. So they've been very, very good to work with.
I know that universities suffer from, I know somebody and they'll help you, but they don't have any money to help you.
Yeah.
I'm pretty tied in with the VIP for A and the extension at MSU. And I think that the extension agents can access this anyway through their portals, but if they're more aware of it, they might.
So this last year I did about 35 different trainings around the state, various state agencies. We just haven't tapped the bottom of the barrel in terms of how much training we need to get out there. Every single training, people are like, wow, I didn't know this existed. Or I didn't know you had as much information as you have. I knew you had good products, but and so we are one of the outreach efforts was with conservation districts, and I'd like to definitely tie in the extension units as well.
I guess I'll do it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Fun. Welcome aboard. Thank you. Fun stuff. It's incredibly exciting. It's a great time to be a librarian. So we are to fiscal 18 closing financial statement.
Sounds good. This is fiscal 18, which is the first year of the 2-year biennium. So this was the first year that we took the big cuts. I think there were no surprises when we closed out the year. I think everybody did a great job in coming through with what we had to come through. Just to highlight a couple areas for you and then open it up if anybody has any questions. But we spent about $20,500 out of the trust. And you can see the 3 projects that we spent them on and what the dollar amount is. And then you can see right below it the approved budget that has gone through you guys to approve these projects. So those are where those projects sit as of June 30th. We had a general fund reversion of about $47,000, which is pretty much a typical year end. We had a little more personal services right towards the end because we had to pull indirects and we had some working on contracts that freed up a little more general fund. By law, I have to pull those indirects first, so that affected that. The second highlight is the full severance tax. This was a big discussion that we had been having. As you guys are well aware, this was the first year that we actually had our own, per se, bank account of this fund. Originally, we were going to try to spend out that appropriation, and you were aware that we were going to give a second chunk to the Federation. Come year end, we didn't have that cash coming in that we needed to do that. The decision was made to just kind of book that cash, let us have a working cash balance to start each year, have money in the checkbook. And it ended up being around $62,000 that we booked, which will definitely help. The revenue is starting to already come in. When I checked this morning, it was right up to around $199,000. So we'll be able to start making those payments right in August, which we had hoped to do. So that is good news on that end. On page 2, just to highlight, just real quick on this, this lists all the funding that we have for fiscal 18. And the balances that you see besides the general fund, we do not lose. Those will be brought back up, or LSTA grants continue on to the next year. So those funding sources you will start to see coming back again in your fiscal 19 budget. Down at the bottom, you can see the trust account, and as of June 30th, it's at the 1.9 million. And you can see what's kind of funny to look at versus June 30th balance. So we had 42,000 and we ended at 1.9. So that was a pretty good year for that trust to come in.
Chris, the STIP earnings, that's interest on the fund?
Yep, that's the interest. And that is going up. So it's at an average of 2%. It used to be like 0.02. So that's actually starting to add a nice little chunk to that. So that's the interest that we earn on the short-term investment pool is where I turn around and invest
Short-term investment pool, okay.
Yep. It's run by Board of Investments. So when we get a chunk in, I turn around and sell it to them and they invest it for us. And that's the, and it's invested in the short-term investment pool. Great. And that's earning 2% right now, which is great. Boy, that's the highest we've seen it. So
That's almost the amount of expenditures.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was all good. On page 3, you'll see at the very bottom the Montana Land Information account. That is the other account that we manage, and you can see it ended at right around $1 million. And it was up from July 1st by about 50,000. You can see versus that. So that one, and the interest is starting to help that one too. So
yeah, 16.5. That's good.
yep. And on page 4, you'll see the Montana Shared Catalog. That is the proprietary fund. Those are the fees that we collect from the participants in the shared catalog. We always try to keep a cash balance because that funds that first quarter going into that next year. That cash balance is up a little, basically because of vacancy savings that has happened with those positions and having a difficult time keeping those filled. Anyway, that's still, it might be just a little high, but it's still very close to what they need. I think what you can see last year was at 33,000, so pretty much doubled. But it's still within the range that's acceptable. And that is about all I was going to highlight. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Ken, do you have any questions? Oh, Ken's not there.
Is that the dog?
Yeah. Any questions by commissioners present? Thank you very much. Then perhaps would be closing financial report.
Nope, that would be the 19th.
That'd be the 19th.
Action on this
Oh,
one.
Well, that's what I was looking for.
Set.
Am I going blind here? Oh, I am going blind. I am going blind. Yes.
Can I interest you too?
Let me put your number on speed dial here.
Record player over there.
Yeah, no, I really was looking at the wrong line. Okay, so here a motion to approve the fiscal 18 closing financial report.
I move to approve the closing financial report for FY.
Thank you, Ann. A second? Any further discussion? In favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much. We put a big check mark there. Okay, and now 19.
So the second financial report presented to you today is your fiscal 19 starting budget. So this is the one we didn't do in fiscal 18 because right then we were going through the cuts and where we were going to be. But this is just a good information sheet for you guys to use. You won't see it in this much detail ever again, but it just sets the base budget of what you need to know. Again, this is only the base budget. It doesn't include all these other funding sources that I'm going to bring over and will bring over in the first quarter. So what this budget is your House Bill 2, your House Bill 576, which is your proprietary funds for your Montana Shared Catalog, the Senate Bill 261, revenue trigger reductions that we took. And so it combines all three of those together and comes up with your starting operation budget for you to consider. Just a reminder that LSTA funds are continuing appropriations, and they just give us authority out there to spend. It does not exactly match the awards. So again, you'll see me doing a lot of adjustments as you guys approve the various awards and the projects that we're tracking. And this appropriation just gives me the authority to spend those grants. The Montana Land Information Account is basically ran the same way. It's just authority that the legislature gives me. The actual amount that is spent is based on the Montana Land Plan, which you guys approve as the budget to spend those funds. And then the very first page, page 1, is your Montana State Library budget as a whole, and breaking it out into the various components that we manage here at the State Library. Just for information purposes, when the legislature approves this budget, they only see the total column to your right-hand side. For legislative purposes, we are one program, one lump sum. And we take that budget and we break it out into a working budget for the areas that you guys hear us talk about all the time. So that kind of breaks out. Just to highlight on FTE, this has been the big discussion. On paper, we have 33.08 FTE. On paper. You do not have the funds to fund 33.08 because of all those cuts. But the legislature doesn't have authority, especially of the governor. They can take our funding, but they can't take that FTE until the next session. So that's the big discussion you guys already heard about. So we physically don't have 33 filled. It's just how I have to show it to you.
And our level filled now is
23-ish.
23-ish, yeah. We're about that 10 down. And then at the very bottom of that page 1 is the funding sources that are funded through those bills that I just talked to you about. The general fund, the poll tax, the library service, the LSTA fund, the shared catalog, the state agency contracts that you hear us talk about, and those are listed right down below it, and the Montana Land Information accounts. Those are the ones that come through the legislature.
so looking at a budget of about 5.5.
Correct. And then the next pages are just, I'm not going to go through them all, they're just for your information. purposes. So I take each of those departments that you saw on this very first page, and I break out the funding sources that go to support that program and what areas they pay for. So just an example on page 2, personal services for library development is general fund, proprietary funds, and LSTA funds. Funds their personal services. And then I give you an example down below of all the other categories. 3 would take that budget one step further and show you the various projects you guys hear us talk about. Showing you out of that operations budget, what's fixed cost, what is cost we have no control over, that just rush through it in our budget, right back out of our budget. And then you'll see the NAC budget, you'll see the Montana Sheriff Catalog budget, the Montana Memory Project budget, but that's only the part that's funded in House Bill 2. You'll see the grants program and the LSTA. So you kind of see those areas. And it's just for information purposes. And then at the bottom of that, I kind of give you an example. What is in contracted services? You'll see it's legal, or just some examples, legal services, printing, just for your information to use it as we go through the year. And I do the same with all of the other programs. So I won't hand walk it through all these, but it's just, this is your guys' reference budget right here. So when I'm getting ready to do this budget in August, this is the budget I'm working on right here in front of you. Based on the new rules, what the governor and the legislative fiscal division have agreed upon, it will be fiscal 19 appropriated. So right here is what you guys are going to see basically as the starting budget for 20 and 21, besides any tweaks that, like I said, that memo we're waiting from the governor's, which the big one being the FTE.
So the areas of concern for commissioners would be basically the difference between the number of allocated FTE and the actual FTE that we've been able to afford and the funds involved with that.
Correct.
Are there any other areas that we should be paying particular attention to?
Well, I mean, that's going to be an area where you guys will have to talk. Anything, you know, the state aid per capita per square mile is in its own bill, is scheduled based on how that wording to come back. So literally, if nobody touches it, that should have no legislative action that needs to be done. So,
and we should see funds from that appear what month of 19?
You won't see those until fiscal 20.
So it'd be July of 19.
Right. The cut instead of Bill 261 or basically that same type of thing, where they took it away for 18 and 19. But that statutory approach was just those two. It should come right back on without any legislative action.
And do those funds have to be collected or something, or do they just sort of magically appear?
Yeah, it's just general fund, and it's just a pass-through to our budget. So libraries that meet the public library standards, once we certify that they do that, passes
So we
through.
should be, if everything goes smoothly, we should be able to write checks in July or August.
Yeah, usually we send them out, I think we do the certification in July, August, and then send them out on the 1st of September.
So roughly a year from today.
Yeah, exactly. And we will know, it will take action by the legislature if they do something different to that state aid. So we would know through the legislative process.
They have to try to open up that statute.
So there's that. Anything else that we should be having our peers?
You know, your coal severance tax is now built with a certain percentage, so that will run right off the revenue estimates that are coming out. So that's pretty safe. You know, it would just be if some of our general fund cuts, like you just heard, the Heritage Program trying to get their general fund back or other funding sources. Our resource sharing, we cut in half. But literally, you're going to have to pick and choose because you can't ask for it at all. So,
yeah. You know, when we met with Director Villa, he was very clear that the priority is trying to keep FTE. I think that's their priority too. He told us, you
we're not looking at any kind of inflationary funding or deflationary funding. We did talk to him a little bit about the funding for the Heritage Program, and he said he directed us elsewhere for that funding. He said to work with legislators rather than through the governor's budget. So there may be those kinds of opportunities to work through the budget subcommittee.
But literally your biggest fight and your biggest concern is getting some FTE down.
I think that has to be our focus.
Understood.
And that certainly was the largest portion of the funding that we lost.
That's somewhere in the neighborhood. The FTE really represents somewhere in the neighborhood of what? 850, 900,000?
Pretty much.
Yeah. Have to pull up that.
Like six something. 6 to 7. But based on whatever comes out with the new health insurance and all the costs that go into, if there's any pay plan adjustments, that'll be your biggest chunk down there. So.
Okay. Nothing to it.
A good place to look back for reference information about the cost of the FTE loss was in those budget reduction planning documents from last year, and those are all available through the commission's archive.
But literally how FTE work is they run it through like a snapshot. So they'll look at, it's a band 6 entry salary, and they plug that in and they plug in the benefits. So the figures will come out as what they need to be funded in 2021, and that's what you would go for. Not necessarily trying to get back, you're just fighting for that FTE cost.
Okay. Any questions for Chris regarding the 19 opening budget? Do I hear a motion to accept it as presented?
I so move.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Thank you both. Any further discussion? All those in favor of accepting the FY19 opening budget as presented?
Hi.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? It's passed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have one more question I'm going to ask you guys. I have what's called an internal control guide that I do, and I update it. One of the things we're updating right now is our organizational chart. So what the state library looks like. And during these cuts that we took, Talking Book Library became under Digital Library. So the question is now facing you guys, because I said that organizational chart should really match kind of the financial report that I'm doing. So, let's look at 19 real quick. So on page 1, you'll see that I have library development, Talking Book Library, the digital library is those two called user services, and then administration. So the question for you is, how would you like to see that financial report? Would it be okay to take Talking Book Library and just put it now under digital library and not have its own separate column?
When it was broken down, it would show then as a program within the digital library. Not on page 1, but further down.
No, it would just be a part of digital library. But you would see it when whoever takes my place does an opening one, and like when I break out all the various things, you would see it there, but you would never see it again in the financial report as its own column.
What's your advice?
I really have. It's totally how you guys.
What about on the revenue report? Because the Talking Book Library gets the lion's share of the donations.
We don't break that out anymore, though. It's the State Library Trust.
It's just all goes into the trust. But you're already not breaking that out. But that is even something that is useful as a talking point sometimes, to be able to say, this is the percentage
internally, we have an internal working
You do.
document where we can say these monies were donated to support talking
Okay.
library services or library development services. So internally, we definitely have that information. We can certainly share it with the commission and
And well, yeah, just as long as that's captured.
That literally is captured on a spreadsheet. Because
Okay.
the trust is Montana State Library Trust. And when I invested into the trust account, into that STIP account, it's one account. So we can keep track of it internally, but nowhere out there in the financial reports.
Some funds in the trust are restricted, some funds are unrestricted. And I assume the restricted funds are restricted for different purposes. Most of which would be what Ann said to the pocket book.
So the information that's contained in the Talking Book Library financial report portion now would be rolled up into what you see in the digital library report. Some of the additions that you would see because LSTA's or Talking Book Library receives LSTA funds, you would see that as one of the funding sources within the digital library.
Like the breakdown on page 7, would that become one of the columns?
Exactly.
Okay.
So you would take page 4 or 5. Page 4 and 5 would go away. And on page 7, it would just become one column in there. Exactly.
I think that's fine.
Do you or other staff have any objections to this?
I don't, and I agree with Chris's first point that really, our operations budget should reflect the organizational chart. I think that makes it more clear to talk about how the programs and the budgets work.
Do you need a vote?
No, I think it just needs direction to your accountant. I don't think it
So-
financial stick.
Do any commissioners have any objection to rolling Talking Book into the digital library budget-wise?
I think it might actually make it easier for us when we're making talking points about, we have these 3 parts of the library, and then, then we just talk about the importance of all of the different things under the digital library.
And as far as the tracking it, the actual input that I do into savers and stuff, it would all still be there. If anybody ever had a question, how much is Talking Book Library, it would still be there. I just would roll it out for you guys.
Sounds like go forth. Okay. Thank you very much. Good suggestion. And wow, that's kind of a big change. Yeah.
But
So-
I think it's the missing change that came from putting it under digital library.
Absolutely. No, it makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense. So I'm going to suggest that we break for lunch.
Okay.
Sound like a plan?
Yes, we had them bag the lunches today, thinking that we might be just a little bit further along in the agenda, so that if people wanted to take lunches to go, they could, but we can also eat them.
Let us bag our bagged lunches. And what are people's pleasure? Do you want us to break for a lunch and then come back to the agenda, or do you want to just sort of work through the agenda while we nibble?
Working lunch.
Would that be okay? Would that be okay for those who need to present? Okay. I would like to add that as part of lunch today, we have a couple monumental things happening. First of all, as you all know, last night we had the 50th anniversary celebration of Talking Book Library, which is actually extraordinarily cool. And I'm pleased, and so I think this is partially in celebration of it. This is partially because your chairman, your current chairman, promised donuts when he. So this is sort of a donut stand, and I hope you'll all be okay with that.
Because of the cell phone ring.
Yeah.
Yes. So donut obis panchem is that old Catholic sort of. Okay. So and then 3, we're not exactly celebrating Chris's departure, but I think it's notable to take and acknowledge it with something sweet, and so that's that. And last but not least, a little bird told me that Marlis's birthday is on or about this time tomorrow, and I'm not going and without putting you on the spot with naming any numbers or anything, we understand it's an important birthday, and therefore we thought it should be celebrated with something that would be acceptable to you. We understand that you're okay with chocolate, so this is about as chocolate as I can find. So there are plates and hopefully a large carving knife to make all that happen. Perfect. So grab your stuff and wander this way, and we will, in just a few minutes, resume. Are you prepared to sort of ease us into Tracy? Thank you.
We have the 3 year proposal to use additional fiscal year 17 STA funds, which we need to spend September 30th of this year. We would like to use them to pay for the data migration for the Rocky Community College Springs Library. Originally, staff had proposed to handle this themselves. That was when we were in a bit of a poverty mentality for lack of a better way to use it. We really thought, well, we'll do this because it is quite expensive. But when we had these funds come available, I really would like to recommend using them for this purpose. We have always paid certain grants in the past to do the renovation. And I did kind of crunch the numbers, and if you just looked at raw numbers, if the staff is accurate and how many hours it would take, it's probably slightly cheaper for the MSC staff to do it. But it doesn't, that cost doesn't include the cost of them doing that work instead of all of the help estimates and other things that are required. It's also just an estimate on their part, having to migrate for data. It can certainly take a long term. So I think this is a really good use of the funds. It's one time only. It's something we've done in the past. It's letting the vendor kind of take care of the work. And as we've heard multiple times, the staff just keeping the day-to-day going with these budget cuts is pretty much about all they can do. So I think despite their generosity in offering to just figure it out on their own, I think it would be wise to use the fund against it.
So let me understand. In the past, we have paid Cersei Dynex to do the migration.
Yes.
So this is not, we're not doing anything new.
Yeah.
Is the amount or the proportion of the of this grant unusual, big or small compared to past?
The cost of the data migration itself or the grant?
So was there ever any matching component to the migration? Did you ever require the client library to? So this is just basically business as usual.
Yes.
And just using some existing unobligated LSTA funds.
Yes. Yes.
I'm just saying that to be very clear, since the recipient library has a member on the commission.
Yes.
And not just that, but I was unaware of this until I read the material. So unless you asked me, and I said yes just in passing, and I didn't remember, which I hope is not the case. But I don't think you approached me to say we're thinking about doing this.
This is how I used to always do it.
Yes.
Makes perfect sense.
Yes.
If people get bored and kind of playing around and doing their nails every afternoon. No.
You know, the reason they did this
That's such a
yeah. I think the reason they volunteered to do this is when we migrated to SAS. The Cersei Dynex's data migration costs went up significantly. So I think what we would maybe like to do is try and negotiate a better deal for the next contract for that data migration.
Any other questions for Tracy and others?
The only other point I wanted to add is when you approved the Lewis and Park Library and the Minnesota Spring Library joining, that amount allocated for Lewis and Park Library included the cost to have Cersei Dynex migrate that library. So, you know, as Bruce was alluding to, taking this approach is consistent with how Lewis and Park will be migrated with this migration.
Oh, you're so kind. Thank you. You're very kind.
Sounds good to me. Other questions? More discussion? This item requires action. May I hear a motion to grant or to authorize spending of $10,720 pay Cersei Dynex to migrate the Medicine Springs Library.
I moved to spend $10,720 to migrate.
We're done.
Wait, I know that's for me. The 17 is for, it's for both libraries.
Yeah, that's the amount that was originally.
Oh. So, that's what he brings, this actual motion. So I moved to, spend 10,720 to migrate the medicine library.
Do I hear a second? Second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And abstained?
Aye.
One abstention. Great. Motion passes. You're good to go. It's so exciting. It's so good. Good. Okay. Commission policy actions.
The first is just a status update on the on-call policy. What we had originally brought you in June was a couple of suggested changes to the current on-call policy that staff follow for providing on-call IT support. Some of the language is just cleanup from the existing policy, but at the time we had brought you this proposal in June, the shared catalog staff were thinking that they needed to better provide support, especially during evening hours, during the week when libraries are still open, and then expanded weekend hours to account for the hours that libraries are open on the weekends. The current on-call policy does not provide for compensation for those periods of time. What staff have begun to realize is that because of the migration to SaaS and the added support from the vendor Cersei Dynex, really the staff themselves are not being called out to provide on-call services. And so they are planning to take the proposal to the Montana Shared Catalog membership at their October meeting to do away with any kind of ongoing regular on-call. Certainly, we understand that there can be emergencies, and we have the opportunity to rely on our vendors for those cases. But staff are beginning to feel like this amount of on-call is no longer wanted. So they are requesting time to think about that more and to have that conversation with the shared catalog membership. And so at this point, it's our recommendation that we withdraw this policy and we would bring it back to you in October. And at that point in time, based on the recommendation from the shared catalog staff and membership, you may only see just the cleanup of the regulation, not the request for the expanded hours.
Any questions about the on-call policy?
We're not requesting action.
Okay. So, broadband pay plan.
This was presented to you at the last commission meeting. We're just opening it up for questions and asking for executive action.
I guess before we begin discussion, I just ask if there's any public comment. I don't know if we have people online. Yeah. Thank you, staff. Here. So discussion then, please, about the broadband. Any questions for Chris at the beginning? Hearing none, are you ready to take and move that we adopt the pay plan as presented?
I'm so moved.
Okay, well, here's a second.
Second.
Thank you. Sue? Discussion. Everyone's had a chance to look at the PAC spreadsheet showing Appendix A.
I was feeling when I'm looking in the appendix, I'm a doctor or something like that. Hearing no questions and no discussion, call for the vote. All those in favor of accepting the broadband fee plan as presented, both in memo and in Appendix A, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Accepted. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for your work on this. This is, I know.
We'll turn it in to the Department of Administration and go on file that this has now been updated. You guys will probably see this again in less than a year. By law, you have to look at this after every legislative session now. So we are now on file, correct with them, that you'll see this again.
You want to help us with the conference room policy?
Yes, please. This conference room policy, you did not see it at your two meetings, so this is a policy that's just being shared with you as draft at this meeting, and then we'll ask for action in October. It's an update to an existing policy. Some of the changes reflect the move from the old Disney room policy to the new policy, but largely it's an update to reflect practices in how our conference room is used. The other significant change is at the time that this policy was drafted, Fish, Wildlife, and Parks had some staff that were co-located in our building, and so the policy gave them broader access to use the conference room. We no longer feel that that's appropriate since they're no longer co-located here. We're not obligated to provide them conference room facilities, and so certainly they would be able to continue to use it as any other state agency would, but they don't have that special access to staff in the building. So that's the other significant change.
Are they aware of this?
Are they aware of this? I don't know.
I don't believe we've discussed it to them, and they actually haven't been trying to do their rooms. It's mostly for our paperwork, so
But we can certainly use it there. Yeah.
okay.
So this isn't really, this is just our internal policy.
An internal policy for how that governs the use of this space. And then there's corresponding procedures that inform users of what they need to use the computer equipment that's available to them.
If I think to April ago, it seems like we looked at a future policy, and this was, I think, part of that
Reference to
discussion.
that.
And I remember that you had concerns about the activities, and I'm trying to remember because you had some good points. And I'm trying to.
It's a first.
You did, and it's true. And I'm trying to remember them because I think you voted differently than the rest of the commissioners. So I just am trying. I would like to give you an opportunity, if you want one, to remind us what your concerns were, if they are still relevant.
You know, I think my concerns were, as much as anything, it was a matter of optics. That we just basically started off by tying our hair into a bun and starting to shake our fingers at our patrons. I thought that was perhaps not the best way to catch flies.
A list of things that we may not do. We led with that, and it was off-putting.
It was off-putting,
What
and
do
I
you
thought some
think
of it was
about this?
unrealistic. Oh, you know, it's hard to be in favor of obscene activities.
You know, and some of the things, like, I think we need to be very clear that people can't sell, they can't use this conference room space for selling purposes.
Yeah, I thank you for reminding me of that. Actually, I blissfully forgotten all about that. You know, it was a matter of optics. I thought that it could have it started off any possible discussion on the wrong foot. It could have been done in the positive as opposed to the negative in terms of stuff. I don't feel strong enough to make a big deal about it, actually. So thank you.
So if I have an understanding then, this is internal, but it would be for public, general public, we would guard that as well within that. So it doesn't matter who would use the space. If I could say, just because safety is on my brain constantly, I see little here on safety. So maybe, I know when we begin our meetings, we share where the restrooms, exits, and everything are. Maybe that's just something that needs to be part of a different type of a guidance document or something you've got.
If we do, in our procedures document, have information about where the exits are, and if not, we can certainly strengthen.
So, and actually, Joe Flick just did up a very nice document for us not very long ago that we've been looking to have people read. We just haven't finished approving it and everything. But that's, it's through our things, this stuff that goes along with this, but it's not part of the commission policy.
There's a bunch of overarching stuff from the general services out there that basically prescribe certain behaviors and stuff like carrying things in Capitol buildings and see the sign on the door.
Can never do enough.
Yeah. So Elsie, if you have other recommendations from policies that you're seeing,
sure,
we'd love to get your feedback on those. Sure.
Especially since you're connected to the Missouri building.
Yeah, I will take a moment to point out that the doors are installed on the conference space, one on each side now, and they do lock. And so that was one of the reasons we wanted to make sure we had that as services. It's a lot quieter.
So we'll review this again in October.
Yes.
Any good comments, good questions? Thank you, Aaron. Any other comment or discussion regarding conference room policy? Jim, talk to us about State Pub.
Sure. Answer questions you might have about the memo and the draft that we sent out. We sent it out to agency directors, public information officers, directors of Montana public libraries, state agency librarians, and then the Secretary of State's office. So we covered all our media partners and much wider as well. We got back a handful of comments, questions, and some of those with regards to language or fiscal impact upon their staff. So overall, positive or neutral. I appreciate the questions because it showed people were interested or
So from my read of this, it looks to me like this is kind of part of the continuing process of maturing our whole sort of collection development, how we manage our stuff. With regard to our sort of primary, one of our primary sets of content.
And just for a reminder, it's spelled out in the memo, but this is the first step in an administrative rules process that we'll undertake from here. The State Publications Management Plan was drafted originally over 6 years ago, and so it needed an update. We felt like that step was important to complete before then beginning to adopt the rules that govern the State Publications Depository Program, which is something that we need to get in place because how we manage the publications, what our management plan is such an integral part of what those rules will ultimately be. And so with commission action on this plan, that will then kick off us formalizing a draft of the administrative rules that govern our responsibilities, agencies' responsibilities, and libraries' responsibilities for maintaining and providing public access to state publications. You see a timeline in the memo for what we plan for that process. But we felt like we would move that process along to get public input on this plan.
When I read the comments, it looked to me as if the Department of Transportation had the longest, most substantive list of questions. And did you feel that there was anything in their comments that would concern you regarding the eventual sort of adoption of these as they go into rule?
I don't think so. They, let's see. Yeah, we just have some questions about, you know, a particular word has an impact upon their agency in terms of cost. And I assured them that there won't be any costs associated with implementing this plan. I could design, help them save money, you know, be more efficient.
Should reduce work, actually, on their part.
I would just add that I believe in the older version of the plan, there were more clearly defined responsibilities for the library and for the agencies. And in this version, we decided to structure around those very clearly outlined items that we had to do: identify, acquire, catalog, preserve, and provide public access. And it's our expectation that those, several of the questions from NDT were about those. What are our responsibilities versus theirs? And it's our intention to have that better defined.
Will the commission be presented with the rule?
Absolutely. You'll get,
part of that.
yeah, we'll present, I think the timeline of the time is a draft rule to the commission in October. And then once you approve the draft rule, then that goes out for public comment. Our hope is to have that process completed by December. There's no magic timeline that has to be adopted by then. But that's, so you'll see it first. You'll hear and be aware of public comments. There's a formula that we go by where if we receive enough public comments, then we have to have a public hearing. And then from there, adopt.
Any further comments from staff, questions from commissioners, comments? It looks to me like our job then would be to agree with the draft state pub management plan as presented to us. After a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Jenny? Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. Awesome. Any further discussion? In favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Ken, have you rejoined us? Nope. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, Tim. It's cool. Right? It's neat. It is really satisfying to see this sort of slowly chug along and sort of just get tidied up. It feels to me, I hope to you as well, that we're headed in the right direction.
We are.
Oh, good.
We are.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Who needs any other approval? It is, as Jim said, it's really positive for the agencies. The tools allow us to basically use their publication practices, which are largely publishing publications, to the web to capture and make sure we're providing that permanent access. So it's efficient for agencies. I think one of the really exciting things for us to think about is what this means for libraries. Just for the notion of a depository library really is not a current model any longer. I think any library can easily, readily be a government information center without the burden of cataloging and managing and providing space for a collection. It's really efficient way to do it online. I think one of my goals of a new administrative rule and an update process is that every single library in Canada sees themselves as a government information center, and the intent to work with Tracy's staff to make sure we're providing the support they need for that.
But to me, it seems like the next big challenge is starting with the tide running the other direction. I mean, it's one thing for Sydney to be able to get state publications through this program. It's the other thing for Sydney to share their city and county governmental information back the other direction, organize it for their use back the other direction. So the government publications are not just feds and state, it's also local, and that they all are done in such a way that actually users can find them.
that's the next challenge, and quite exciting actually. We'll do that when we get another couple of FTEs. How's that sound? Okay. Thank you. So last item on our agenda is election of commission officers. We have 2 officers to elect, a chair. And we have opened up nominations our last meeting for chair, and we had one volunteer. Aaron volunteered for chair. Are there any other volunteers for the position of chair? Any other nominations? Close nominations then, and I would suggest that we elect Aaron by acclamation.
Here, here.
You're here. Thank you very much.
Bless your heart.
Excellent.
I feel a little bit like I'm volunteering for you.
And as I pass the gavel, we still have the vice chair.
First, thank you very much. I appreciate your leadership. Thank you.
It's been fun.
So how many years do you serve as past chair?
There is no position of past chair.
Oh. You gotta create that, give you something to do.
I'll be calling on him.
kind of like a dairy product. Some chairs have been pasteurized.
That transition though, this might be something to think, because in a transition, regardless of, we got easy environment. But if we had more of a difficult environment, it might.
The only problem I see with that is if, say, Bruce was not going to put another application in, and it's working last year, and he couldn't necessarily be last year.
I see.
Because he would no longer be application. That's the only thing
Okay.
And that was kind of the problem we ran into when Bruce and I all started at the exact same time, because of people had dropped off of the commission and some people had just not reapplied, and so I don't think it ever happens, but there were 3 positions vacant. So so I would worry about putting too much on having beyond your scope of service, which is why we might not have past chair. Is it you? Is it now me? Do we have to vote for our vice chair?
We do. And I think as long as the vice chair is in the bylaw, we do that.
We do. Yes, I do. Okay. So we had one volunteer. I remember. Okay.
True. Must be you. It's not me.
No.
I still don't even know how to read the stuff.
So are there any other volunteers or nominations for vice chair?
If there are no other volunteers, I would volunteer to be vice chair. I'm very talented. I could really coming here for some odd reason. If you would be comfortable with
But Anne was nominated as the.
Were you nominated?
I was, but I.
Oh.
No.
No, I withdraw. I withdraw. Honestly, I do.
I don't mind.
I didn't hear that. I'm supposed to be. Or I was supposed to. No longer do I have to. So I withdraw.
Yeah. We'll just vote for whoever.
Everybody put your head down.
Everybody close your eyes.
This is why I give the super here.
Lord.
But at the last meeting, my concern that I voiced was that, what if we don't have anyone in Helena? And you said, well, I'll still be in Helena even if I'm not an officer, and I'll still be happy to rush if we have a 30-minute notice to get to a meeting, which can happen.
That's good guidance. That's right there. That's what I
That
was
works.
looking for in the past chair, is to have a little bit of tie to history. And I think if that would be the case, that's good.
It's hard to get down here in half an hour, isn't it?
Yeah.
I can do it for myself.
Okay, so would you like to
Well,
see
no,
withdraw?
I think if you're willing to be vice chair, I think you should be vice chair.
I would love to be vice chair.
Then I would vote for you. And then if for some reason I need to be here, you've got my phone number, which I think works quite well.
Okay, so
Dedication never ends.
we'll
Pardon
close,
me?
Dedication never ends.
we'll close the nomination. And I'm sorry, Bruce, but I will actually have to look up acclamation, what exactly does that mean?
I just make stuff up.
I'm like, that sounds good.
Well, a lot of people will vote to approve a slate of officers on boards. Is that your experience on boards?
So let's make we just vote, no motion.
We've done it both ways in the past, or if there is nobody else, that we just vote just a separate that way, and we've also voted individually for.
How about this? I move that by acclamation, the vice chair of the board.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Uh-huh.
Aye.
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 Did you just get Kendall?
Sounded like it, yeah.
Give him a chance to weigh in on Ann. Oops, sorry. Shut up, Bruce.
All those opposed?
Or Ann.
Any abstaining? The motion passes, so everyone gets will be the next vice chair.
Great.
This is Ken. I just rejoined.
I can write in time for us to adjourn, so if there's any other public comment, any other business announcements?
Ken, this is Jamie, and we've just elected Aaron, sorry. I was thinking of Evan. Not that you look nice.
Evan's real uncomfortable right now.
Yeah. And Ann as chairman and vice chairman. Or
That's great. Congratulations.
whatever.
I just had one update that I forgot to mention under your calendars, and I'll add this to your working calendar. In addition to last night's celebration, you'll recall that we've allocated money from the trust to do receptions at both the conferences for the National Federation for the Blind Chapter of Montana and the Montana Association for the Blind. Firm dates for the actual receptions just yet, but I do have the dates of those conferences. The National Federation for the Blind would be September 21st through 23rd at Jorgensen and Helena. And then the Montana Association of the Blind is October 5th through the 7th, and that's going to be at the Comfort Inn in Bozeman. So again, once we have the exact date and time for the receptions, I'll put those on your calendars. If you're available as a commissioner to go and meet those important stakeholders and help us celebrate the 50th anniversary together.
Are you doing a school for the deaf and blind in Great Falls?
When was our last presentation to the commission, or have you ever done a field trip up there, or anything regarding that school? It's governed by the Board of Public Ed. It does follow guidance from our agency, but we've never had. Well, okay, let's see what coincides, because they are always present whenever there's a Board of Public Ed meeting, which has been held here in Helena, and it might coincide with the next meeting. Which would be then we could have the administrator come and just share the positive success.
We are talking with library staff, obviously, we're closely with them, so I think that would be a great thing.
Okay.
Our, one of our speakers last night at our event, Mr. Sheldon, Dale Sheldon, was a student there in the 40s.
He was commissioner when I first served
Oh, really? Cool.
county commissioner.
Yeah. What a remarkable group.
I have a question about the next meeting. Okay, so it was moved as a reminder to the 9th. Erin, are you going to be at the next meeting?
No, so you will be chairing that meeting.
Okay.
Your first duty was vice chair.
Okay.
And I wasn't sure if we were worried about having quorum, or are we still?
Yeah, that was.
I think we didn't know Jean who was picking up this fight we now have.
I think it depends on you.
Moved it, it's the 9th.
October 9th.
It's the next.
And Bruce had, I think, perhaps 10 to 15. They have to figure out the top
Bruce Camp.
Yeah.
Thank you for the
Yeah.
better than just all showing up.
You don't have to do that if you.
No, that would
We
be
could
lovely.
also
I
meet
really like
somewhere.
that. I would like that very much.
And it would be, I think everyone would be happy if you did assignments, potluck assignments. I'm guessing you have a master. I guess you usually do for dinner.
I'll have my people call your people.
Okay, great. Just, yeah, email us what you.
Yeah, I'll have my people call your people.
So if ever you'll be able to make that commission meeting on the 9th?
At this time, I'm committed. I've been committed. I'm hoping I can be in the whole meeting.
Okay.
Within that, but yes,
That would be great because I would prefer not to be at the meeting online. I'll be in a workshop. So, but if we did have problems with quorum, I would be willing to forego my workshop.
And
I think Henning also has had something that I don't think Henning. It was close when we looked at the quorum, and I'm not remembering who, but. Can you be here on the 9th?
it also depends on the work plan for action items. You know, if it's that crucial, then the action items can be either postponed or moved or more of a discussion item rather than.
I wasn't aware we were close to. I knew that Erin wasn't likely to be available, and at that time I didn't think we had it.
Okay.
So, but we can totally push it.
Okay.
And I can always, I can log in at the beginning. Yeah. Okay. Is there any other business or announcements? I guess publicly I want to say really quick, thank you to Jenny and Bruce for coming up to Browning during Indian Days. I think it was really great to have them in my community and to have them taking part in the activities that I did during the powwow for my library. And then, being a part of the research that we're doing on the needs in my community. They were there for interviews that we did with the Glacier County librarian and the Winter City librarian. And they helped set up a meeting for our library. We're available for a while the next day to help with some getting to know people who were at the powwow and getting to do, I think you guys might have helped with a couple of interviews. So it was really wonderful to have them physically there. I really appreciate all the work they did. So thank you guys.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure and privilege to work with.
Erin had a terrific setup at the Indian Days with her TV and bookcases, books and giveaways, and she had this adorable interactive lemonade stand for kiddos to come and interact with.
And that was part of my, we are cousin librarians with Imagine If. So Madison Spring Library and Imagine If have a relationship that we're figuring that out. but Kim Crowley brought the market stand from Imagine It over to take part in the library launch. So I'm hoping to create new types of partnerships between libraries, not just local, but with big businesses. And so I'm excited to maybe next year at MLA will present on what different libraries, what other libraries in the state can do. But no, I just wanted to say thank you. So one more time, no other announcements. We will adjourn.
Excellent.